Hey, it's Jose Galison. You're watching No Way Jose. You can find me on No Way Jose YouTube channel, all the major audio podcasters, and Odyssey as well. Today we're doing 4 Ponyboys. Anyone that's been paying attention knows we got old Davey Smith today. A little bad news. We were going to try to do the whole crew, but Top's out for today. So, deal with it. I'm going to tell you. I wish he was here, but, he had stuff come up. We got Reed, Clint as well. I'm looking forward to this. Should be a good one. I do want to address my sponsors real quick. If you do want to support me, patreon.com, it's just No Way Jose 2020. My sponsors are CD McRae of the Whiskey and Tea podcast. I have Jeremy, who has an Etsy shop at etsy.com/shop/raising liberty. And Mikkel Thorup of the Expat Money Show. Without further ado, let's just fucking get right into it. Let's get Reed in here. What's up, Reed?
Not much, just shitting my brains out, but other than that, not much going on.
Best lead in. You can't leave me now that Top's here, because it'll just be weird if 4 Ponyboys with 3 dudes. So.
That's what you get when you have a sick guy on the show. So
yeah, well, you got to stick through. All right.
Yeah.
All right, we got Clint. What's up, man?
What's going on, gents?
I'm fucking excited for this. Yeah. I'm super happy about this. I have all my best buddies. Not all. Missing Toad and Cole, but they weren't invited, and then Top was obviously, and then we have Dave joining us. What's up, Dave?
What's up, fellas?
I've been looking forward to this. This is fun.
Why did my audio just cut out?
Oh, you're good here.
We can hear you. Can you hear us? Testing.
Beep, boop, boop. Wonderful time for audio problems. Let's give Davey a second.
Let's just use sign language. Oh, now we can't even hear him. Nice.
Oh, wow. Watch, he probably can hear us, but can't talk now. What just happened? All right, well, while we wait for Dave to figure out his issue, I only have one super chat.
What's your least favorite thing about Dave, Clint? No, I'm just kidding.
His audio issues is really bothersome. Not a fan.
Wow, this is unique. This is the first time I've ever gone Dave silent, so...
First Top. Now Dave can't make it.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, I guess.
All right. Well, I got to take a shit. So no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess Dave will probably come back in. We'll see if we can't fix that. We'll bring out the Toad super chat. If you're getting tons of attention and the bad guys are all coming at you for doing something right, LPNH are based. Great grammar. I love Dave and all the Ponyboys. Full homo.
We love you too, Toad.
100% endorsed on the whole thing, especially the full homo.
Well, all right. Sweet. That's interesting. So, what are you guys?
I think I have Rona, but I haven't tested. So I've just been sitting in my room since Sunday afternoon.
Have you gotten it before?
I don't know, because I've only tested once, but it was when I wasn't sick, so I could go to something, and I was negative. So I could have had it a few times at this point. I don't know.
You are one of my favorite people as well, James. All right, James Gentleman of the Retired Blackbird podcast. All right. Well, this is
Clint. Didn't it really mess you up or did you not have it, or did you have it? I can't remember.
Yeah, no. I never tested, so I don't know for sure. But I was laid out for 3 days, bad.
Yeah.
And then I was pretty much right as rain, like 5 days in. So no big deal. I got a huge lightning storm right in front of me, so it's going to be. If my power goes out, this will be a real disaster.
It'll just be Jose by then.
So Reed, you talked on a recent you had what was it at the Defend the Guard rally? You want to tell the people about that one, because I thought that was pretty cool, and it was pretty mega base, but also like kind of something that needed to be said.
Yeah, well, I read Osama bin Laden's fatwa out loud because I pulled it up on my phone, and I changed a couple words just because I didn't want to get like completely canceled, but I got just after changing a couple words, I got the whole thing across, and I said, basically, hey, we keep saying never forget, but we never learn anything. We haven't changed any of the things from Osama bin Laden's declaration of war against America in 1998. We still do all of those same things. We actually occupy more land. And then I said we did the same thing with Russia. Like, Russia told us far ahead of time they were going to do something. We kept arming Ukraine and kept pushing NATO closer to their border, and then they have, and now we're on the doorstep of doing that same thing with China over Taiwan. Xi Jinping screamed at Biden on the phone saying, "Do not play with fire."
Well, you have
And
to
we're
scream
still-
at Biden on the phone so he hears you.
Yeah, it's true.
You have to go, Joe. Well,
that answers
He
our
may
question
not
if
have
Dave's
understood at
back.
all.
I'm back.
Yeah, Dave can hear
sorry
us now.
sorry about that, fellas. I hear you now. Had to fucking restart
good.
this shit.
Technology's a bitch. I don't understand it either.
So you're talking about like the fucking reaction to 9/11 and the anniversary and everything?
I gave a speech at a Defend the Guard rally, basically
sweet.
saying we haven't changed anything since what got us into 9/11. So the only point in remembering 9/11 or any tragedy or whatever is to try to make it not happen again, right? But if, like if it's never forget, like okay, cool, we won't forget, but it could happen again
what's
because
even
we
like
keep doing this.
To me, like what's even crazier than that about like this last year, like this last, this 2 days ago, fucking this last anniversary, is that it seemed like for years there was almost kind of like an implicit recognition that like, some problems were made. Like 10 years ago, there was a famous piece in the New York Times that talked about how 9/11 completely changed the relationship between the average person and their government in the United States of America and the Patriot Act and all this shit. And it would almost be like 9/11 became, they wouldn't exactly admit it, but they would just go, this horrible thing happened to us. Let's remember all those people. But this year particularly, it seemed like the message wasn't even at all like, oh, we didn't learn the mistakes of 9/11. It was like what we learned from 9/11 was this is how we have to deal with terrorists. And now we have these other terrorists who are the Trump supporters. So, we got to deal with them the same way. Like it was almost like as if this was like an overwhelming success. Right. What happened in all of these countries. And now if we just could work up, the political will to apply all of that same pressure that we applied to Iraq and Afghanistan to anybody who questions the election results, that's what we got to do. And like my last podcast was on this, like clips from the head of the Department of Homeland Security and Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, all kind of saying shit like this. And that's, to me, that's like almost so much creepier than just not learning the lessons. It's not only not learning the lessons, but they think the lesson is that should be applied to American citizens.
Yeah, that presents a perfect segue for one of the things I want to talk on. I've been lately covering a lot of like stuff along these lines. I've done a whole giant series on the OKC bombing, which I'm like after digging deep into it, and I'm usually I feel like I'm a fair person when I go down conspiracy roads. And I had Richard Booth come on with me, who is the Libertarian Institute's OKC guy. So like, and he's documented the shit out of this. I'm like 100% certain there was a cover up, and like 90% certain it was an op. So like that's kind of where I'm at with it now. I can't say with certainty it was not, but I can say with certainty it was definitely a cover up. I've had one of the Michigan guys come on. We've been breaking that down. I had Duncan Lemp's girlfriend on. Like I have been pinging like crazy lately. Every one of my spider senses has been like everything feels like the only thing they're missing to sell what they need is an event, and whether that's natural, whether it's instigated, whether it's full on done by them, I am fucking like, because right now we're in the spot where it's like, I think people are like, what the fuck? Like, this is silly. But if an event happens, I think, hopefully we're at a point where maybe the energy has shifted and it won't be this 9/11 effect, but I'm kind of worried it will be. So I'd kind of like to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
Well, I theorized this when I was on Part of the Problem with Dave a week ago. It's like that speech from Biden, as over the top as it was, it certainly felt as if he was trying to antagonize, some political dissident to do something crazy. And I feel like that's kind of been the trend, is that they just continue to push the envelope on the language, the descriptions of their political enemies. And it's just really it's escalated to a point that I really don't think we can come back from in terms of the language that's being used to describe people. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, but what about Trump and the way he described, like Trump described the media like that. He also described, his political opponents like that. This new trend is just to label basically anybody that didn't vote for Biden as a potential domestic extremist, which leads towards terrorism. I mean, it's horrifying.
Yeah, I don't know where you guys were on January 6th, but to me that seemed like plenty of a reason to arrest everybody. That was like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. But anyways, go ahead, Dave.
Well, like, I mean, look, like if Trump had ever, there was always something like with Trump too, which whether this is fair or unfair, he always kind of came off like a character. Like there was this like comedic element to what he was doing, and so he was roasting CNN and roasting the Clintons and all of this, and But if Donald Trump had ever taken it, whereas like you don't feel the same way with Joe Biden, you don't feel like he's doing that. If he says something, you feel like, okay, this is a politician telling you he means something. Now, that may be unfair because I guess Trump was a politician at a certain point when he's the president of the United States of America. But, if Trump had ever like started turning around and saying like, hey, the people who are denying the election results of 2016, and saying, which was just as ridiculous as 2020, like there's no, I don't know, maybe less ridiculous, honestly, because at least in 2020, you could say they upended the way we did voting and we're doing vote by mail and we don't know how to track it or something. 2016 was just like Russia did it. It was ridiculous. But if he had ever started saying like, or indicating that like the people denying that ought to be locked up, like I know I would, and I'd like to think like all you guys and our whole movement would have been like, whoa, that's right. And not just saying like Kamala Harris and the other politicians who say that, but you're just saying like regular people, like some mom in like the Upper West Side of Manhattan who is like, yeah, I don't think Trump won the election because Russia cheated. Like that person's like an enemy of the state. That's a whole different level of like, this is, so it's not just Trump like saying shit or even like chanting lock her up at his rallies. The truth is that there were never any actual moves to lock Hillary Clinton up, and that there's actually reasons why you should, there should be a trial first or whatever, but it all just seemed like kind of like, it seemed like empty rhetoric with him. Whereas this is much more, as Clint said, much more directed to the people and doesn't feel the same way. It doesn't feel like it's just for effect. So,
and it doesn't feel this. It doesn't feel the same way because it's not. I mean, they have been raiding and investigating via the FBI tons of people that were like just tertiarily involved with January 6th. Like they weren't even. Many of them weren't even there, but because of their social media posts, they're now investigating them. I mean, this is it's an escalation. It's a really serious escalation. And even though I'm not a Republican and none of us are,
I am.
That's right.
I had to register as a Republican today, so I'm a Republican, guys. Sorry, I voted.
That's okay. I'm proud. You're a statist, and I totally understand. But it seems quite evident that it's not just the Republicans. It's anybody who isn't not even a Democrat, but a Biden supporter specifically. Like it's gotten down to that narrow of a lane. And
and like how much it's like fucking, especially within like the liberty movement, there are these things like we would talk about, like the lockdowns were like a big example of like all of us would say, hey, look, man, like if we're in this like space like the liberty movement or whatever, if you're not against lockdowns, then like are you really even here with us? Are you really even in the same thing? Because there'd be all these like so-called professed libertarians who would just make excuses or even support it or even go like, well, we don't think the government should do this, but we really do think you should stay home and not go. It's like if you're just not against this, then I don't know. Then what are you really in this same thing that I'm in? And another really good example of that is just like the fact that no one, it seems like, is willing to stand up for the people who committed the crime of entering the building on January 6th, who have like been held in solitary confinement for like hundreds of days, in some cases over 300 days, just held in solitary confinement for like nothing. A completely, as the Cato Institute would like to say, victimless, non-violent crimes, right? But we can't, if it was like almost any other group that you could imagine, they'd be right there, advocating for those people being released. But because it's the one that is going to get you labeled all of these bad things, because it's the one that's like politically inconvenient to stand up for, they'll just be completely silent on it. And I guess like I think our camp, like our whole thing is that we can't follow those rules. Like you can't follow the rules that like when the powers that be go, no, you can't talk about this one. Okay, we shut up about this one. Like, because then there's no point in everything we're doing.
Yeah, well, consider this too. I mean, imagine had Trump won re-election and then he decided to have some sort of congressional hearing, or the higher ups in the Republican side decided to have some congressional hearing to go and investigate not just the founders of Black Lives Matter and all of the violent people that were at those protests, but they started to just have the FBI go knock on anyone who had any social media post having been at any Black Lives Matter rally throughout the summer of 2020. I know, even though all of us opposed the violent criminal actions that happened during that summer, none of us would have supported the FBI going after people that were just participating in what they had hoped would be a peaceful protest. And that's basically what we're seeing now with January 6th, where if you were involved at all, you are an enemy of the state. And I just think that is that's something that everyone needs to speak out against.
I was actually at a Black Lives Matter rally in 2020, and I remember this is because I didn't really know much about them, and I just kind of went to check it out.
Black people?
Yeah. And this was that too. I'm from New Hampshire, and 99% white. But
so you guys eat food just like us?
Can you guys see in the dark?
But when I completely threw that movement aside was when I actually was I was kind of like Peter Schiff at Occupy Wall Street, asking people, do you know what qualified immunity is? Do you know what civil asset forfeiture is? Do you know that the police departments around the country get like $100 billion from the federal government every year? And nobody knew any of this shit. And they're all out there yelling, no justice, no peace. And, they don't have an idea of what justice is. But to your point, Clint, I wasn't there instigating anything or even necessarily supporting their cause. I was actually just there trying to figure out what was going on. And I know people who were the same way at January 6th. They were at the Capitol. They didn't go in, but they were just there seeing what was happening. And to demonize all of them with a broad paintbrush stroke is a huge mistake.
The wild thing is that we're seeing this turn inward, and we see this as a distinct, unique thing, and it is in its own right. But this, in a lot of ways, even I brought up the Michigan stuff. I'm reading right now Terror Factory by Trevor Aronson. He goes into how informants have set up all these terrorism plots and really kind of drives home the point that a lot of it's to justify their budget. They kind of have to create terrorism, and it's insane some of the stuff they do, and it's awful. And a lot of those same tactics are now being flipped inward. And it's kind of funny because I think the ending point, I have 15 minutes left in it, but it seems his ending point in that story is a bit of a lefty, because he points out all this awful stuff they're doing to them, and he kind of makes the point that well, maybe it should be spent on domestic. And I'm like, how the fuck can you do all this and get to this conclusion? But whatever. And it's we're kind of seeing that. I brought up the Michigan thing. A lot of those guys, and actually I don't think pretty much none of them did absolutely anything. Only one of them really even flew off the handle, mouthed off and did dumb shit. A lot of those guys were just guys that were going to hang out with other guys, go shoot guns. When these feds were bringing up kind of implying stuff, pretty much all the guys were no. No. And it's
multiple times. And that's and the creepiest thing about that one, right, with the Michigan Whitmore plot, was that it wasn't to justify their own budget. That wasn't what that was about, which is almost in some ways, when that's what they're doing, it's a little bit more understandable. But this was specifically to demonize the anti-lockdown, pro-Trump American. That was the mission the whole time, very clearly. This wasn't, you know what I mean? That there was no other purpose that this would serve. It was that a harsh lockdown governor, they were saying, well, look at the people who oppose lockdowns. Those people are the ones who are plotting to kill her, kidnap her, and kill her, or whatever. And so that's to me much more creepy than just a false flag that's and this is why you got to give us another $200 billion or whatever. It's no, this is setting up the next stage of this shit, which is to demonize anybody. And you see this, the head of the Department of Homeland Security the other day goes oh, well, the biggest threat is domestic terrorism and domestic extremism, and the way that they the way that they're supported is through the spread of misinformation. And you're oh, all right, well, what does he mean by that? That's us. That's what he means. Yeah. The people, 100%. Right, the people spreading the misinformation, claiming that Fauci's wrong about everything over the last 2.5 years, which he has been.
Yeah. And I would suggest people to look into how they work with informants with these type of ops. The guy in the Michigan one, I think it was something he was only there for 6 months, and he made well over six figures, not including a lot of the other things he got. So, well over six figures over a 6-month period. Now ask yourself, some of the people what would they be willing to do for 6 figures over a 6-month period of time? and ask yourself, are you really safe? And this is a kind of what this whole informant system has fostered. And there's multiple issues more than just that, but it's fucking insane. The more you go down this rabbit hole and where they're going.
And what is it really about? It's not about getting these dangerous, potential kidnappers off the streets. It's about making people like us and MAGA and whoever else that's a political dissident that oppose lockdowns, whatever, oppose vaccine mandates. They want us to be afraid to have any sort of communion with our like-minded people. And, I've just decided I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to continue to talk about this stuff because it's more important than anything. And if we allow them to chill our speech in this moment, then we stand no chance. I mean, we already have this monolithic narrative that makes everything such a narrow Overton window as to what we're allowed to talk about. And, I think that's also large part of the reason that Alex Jones got crucified in court with that. I don't know if you guys watched any of the actual hearings, but that judge could not have been more biased against it. It was absolutely insane. He couldn't even declare his innocence. He couldn't inform the courtroom or the jury that he had apologized over 20 times in the preceding 4 or 5 years. I mean, it was just the whole deck of cards was stacked against him, and it seems as if this is what they're trying to do. They're trying not just to go after these nobodies that were militiamen that were just basically at a shooting range talking shit. They're now trying to get everybody afraid to speak out, and that is horrible.
Now imagine something like, keep in mind the narrative of Alex Jones and what you just pointed out there. Now imagine some event happens and all of a sudden the media goes into a tailspin like it did, especially in the COVID, with all the COVID stuff. You get pulled down if you say this or say that. And now you have this precedent of, let's say it's some sort of false flag or an instigated thing or some, because it's kind of hard to label it one or the other. If the people immediately are coming out and pointing out this, they're probably going to be the people who are treated just like the COVID people, if not worse, if not trying to imply, some sort of legal action against them, which they've kind of sort of set the precedent with Alex, although it was a civil thing, but still.
Same thing happened with the war in Ukraine. I mean, there was a lot of people that were deplatformed because they were, quote unquote, propagating Russian propaganda, which when you're dealing with a war, there's propaganda on both sides. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's important that we're allowed to have both sides of that propaganda and hopefully something in between so that we can come to some sort of rational understanding as to what's actually transpiring. And at this point, it's like 99% of media coverage is just like Russia, aggressor, evil, Ukraine, heroic, fighting for their liberty. And as we all know, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
I love how they just repeat unprovoked attack over and over again. Yeah. Like, that's just what they all say. It almost just lets you know how guilty they are, that they have to say unprovoked attack so much. Man, I'll tell you, dude, with the Alex Jones thing, it just fucking sucks. And I guess the lesson in all of that is yeah, man, just don't make their job any easier for them than you have to, because he really did he really did fuck up with the whole Sandy Hook thing so bad, dude. And just in a horrible way. In the same sense that we go, and I understand it's not the same as the president of the United States or something like that, but in the same sense where it was Alex Jones always had these conspiracy theories, and I know there's a lot of people even in our movement who kind of have this Alex Jones was right again, and he was right about this, and I don't know. As someone I actually know Alex Jones and his history. He was wrong about so many things, dude. And he said so many off the wall, wild things that he just couldn't back up at all. But the thing with Alex Jones that did change with Sandy Hook, and I should disclaim that obviously Sandy Hook wasn't why they moved to take him down. It was actually years after the fact, and it was more because he had a whole bunch of armed, scary Trump supporters that he was speaking to this huge audience of, and they didn't like that. But he was the target of his conspiracies were always Dick Cheney or the FBI or the ATF or something like that. And then all of a sudden with Sandy Hook, it just got so dark where the target of his conspiracy was parents who had just lost their 5-year-old. In the most horrible way. And then he was out there for a year and a half saying that didn't happen with nothing to back it up, and really did. I mean, I'm not saying the lawsuit is right or whatever, or the way the judge handled it is right, but really did send his audience to like, I mean, not that he told them to, but he said the thing that led to them all going and like harassing these people. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, what a fucking horrible thing to do. And he was wrong. And then he turned around and just denied that he ever did it. And like, which is bullshit. Like, the record's out there, dude. He was doing it for a year and a half, saying that Sandy Hook never happened and that they were crisis actors and that no kids were killed. And just, goddamn, man. I gotta say, dude, like, the idea that there's somebody whose 5-year-old was murdered and then you're making that person's life a little harder is so, like, God, it's so fucked up. And so I think he fucked his whole thing up with that, man. It was a really bad, like, to me, the lesson of that almost is like, we know what we're up against. Don't fuck up and make it that much easier for them to really paint you that way, where you're not going to garner any sympathy from people because they're just going to be like, yeah, fuck that guy.
No, that's a great point.
I don't know all the details of the Alex Jones thing and all of that. I'll take your word for it, but I will say a common thing, and this was the thing that happened with the OKC thing, is they would push back against people because of the kid aspect. And don't get me wrong, I don't know the details of Sandy Hook. I mean, I don't know what he was trying to back it up with, if he had anything whatsoever. It seems like he probably didn't. But, my point being is and maybe this creates the impetus for like future things to where they can kind of do that, like, the kids,
Let me add two ounces of defense for Alex. One, his defense, according to the prosecution, which they didn't contest this point, he said that he only had 6 hours total. Alex does 4 hours per day, every day, 6 days a week. He had 6 hours total in that year and a half span that you're talking about, Dave. So, it's
but 6 hours total of what? Him just talking about it. So that could be him mentioning it every fucking episode for, you know what I mean? Like the entire, like if you did 10 minutes on it every single night, it'll take you a long time to get to 6 hours. So I don't know. I don't know if they meant 6 hours of him actually covering this topic and that was it, or if it was just 6 times like the word Sandy Hook came up. Because if that was the case, that'd be way over the top. But I just wanted to say, what made me such a fan of Alex Jones is that he went from being on, I think it was over 200 radio stations syndicated in 1999. And in 2001, he came out instantly and hard against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he lost basically 90% of his audience because of that. Like, there are some things that earn you my loyalty. And that's one of them. If you're willing to just completely destroy your platform because you actually believe in something, that's really important to me. So that's the main reason I like him.
I just add a caveat that right after 9/11, he was based for a very short period of time, and then he started going like crazy, in my opinion. Like, even in the 90s, he was a little out there on some stuff, but for the most part, he was, attacking stuff that we would attack and from a similar angle that we would. But then it seems like sometime in the early 2000s, he jumped on the sensationalization train and just, blow everything up as absolutely ridiculous and discredit any, like you can't even talk about the Saudis giving aid to Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Madar, which totally happened, 100% true. You can't even talk about that without people shaking their head at you and being like, man, you're just one of those crazy kook conspiracy theorists. It's like, no, that's just true. That did happen. And I feel like Alex had a lot of credibility in that moment. Like, you actually see on September 12th, he did a stream where he's talking about the reason this happened is because we back Israel and, they like to blow stuff up. And, that's what causes this backlash. And he was basically making Ron Paul's argument that he made in 2007, but then he just kind of threw that all away.
And in July of 2001, he listed bin Laden's name and said that there was going to be a there was going to be a terrorist attack in America within months. And he nailed that. He also protested outside of the Waco compound within days of that.
Totally agree. I'm talking
he actually did really good shit. And that's why it kills me.
In the 2001 thing,
diminishes it all.
Yeah, in the 2001 thing, he also did this weird cover for Israel where he said the Palestinians were savages or something like that. There was
then he said Syria and Iran have nukes or something.
Yeah. He also but that's the exact point, right? So then he would say this thing it'd be okay, there were a few good points there, and then he also would tell you with certainty, because it now refreshing my memory because this is a long time ago, that Iran already has the nukes.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, this was the thing. He was always like, he was so sloppy. And like, that's, I don't like these conspiracy theorists. And I won't name any names, but there's several that I'm thinking that probably
Say my name.
Reed knows who I'm talking about because I've had private conversations with him. Like, no, not you, Jose. I'm talking about, real people. But I'm saying, like, there's a lot of these guys who kind of make their names off being conspiracy theorists, and they're like, listen, I'm going to tell you the truth of how things really are. But then they're so sloppy with this shit. And it's true that they get some big things right. And there's things you could point to about Alex Jones where I go, yeah, goddamn, that was so cool that he like called that or got that. But then he would just also be in 2001 just telling his audience, like, for a fact, Iran already has the nukes. They have the nukes right now, and we're going to get nuked because of what we're doing over there. And it's like, I don't know, dude. I like, and this is probably part of like why I love fucking like Rothbard and like Mises and like all these guys, is I like tight arguments that are like foolproof and really well thought out. I don't like this like all over the place sloppy shit where you take some liberties and kind of like, to make my narrative better, I'll also just throw in 3 things that I'm completely making up and just kind of make it sound good. And so that's why a lot of those guys I just like, it's just not my style. It's not like what I like particularly like. But that being said, he did. I'll give him, I give Alex Jones credit for a lot of shit. I'll give him credit for the fact that even after he supported Trump so hard, he did really like criticize him when he bombed Syria the first time. And I respected that a lot in 2017. I respected that a lot that he did that. So,
I think like some of these people who get pulled in, like, do you know who Adam Fitzgerald is? You ever heard of him or seen him on Twitter or anything? Because he has like a document backing every single statement that he makes up. And then whenever he is, guessing on something, he'll always say, please understand that this is merely speculation. This is what I think could have happened here. But then like with his facts, he's backing everything up with documents.
Well, I respect that.
Finds.
I respect that a lot more.
But just because he's touching similar areas. Yeah.
I to touch on that real quick before we move on from
touching similar areas, he gets done.
Yeah, to touch on the Alex Jones thing real quick, because I think the moral of the story is I think it's so important to have your logic grounded in like solid logic, and because I can sympathize with these guys who go way down the rabbit hole, because once you start digging into these things, you realize how much of this stuff is legit. Like there is so much dark shit out there that is like you can be like find little bits here and there and be like, this is legit, but then you try to tie it into a larger narrative, and that's where you can get sloppy. And so and especially when of things like Operation Mockingbird, Operation Northwoods, you start piecing all these things together and you realize what they're capable of. Then it is like it's almost like Alex Jones could have benefited from having a Shermer as a co-host. And Shermer is like kind of the opposite problem. He will like bend over backwards to logic for the fucking regime. And it gets a little ridiculous sometimes. Like, I get it. You're trying to be skeptical here, but you're getting to retard level of skeptical.
You mean Michael Shermer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there another one? But yeah, that's what I do think it's super important. Like I even like with my OKC thing and with Richard Booth, every time we do get into speculation, and I'll try to present like, hey, this could be interpreted this way, it could be interpreted that way. Like, take this information, do with it what you will, but it does paint a weird picture. And I think that is important. I think especially when you're going down these conspiracy roads. I mean, I can sympathize with you if you do jump the gun and go crazy with it. But at the same time, it's like you may do more damage than good.
I talk quite a bit of conspiracy stuff on my show, but I'm always very clear that I am guessing. Because I don't know. I know that the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and all of the biggest businesses on the planet basically meet in Davos once a year, and they come out of there speaking the exact same rhetoric. And I don't think that's coincidental. And I think I would not be doing my audience a service to pretend as if I don't notice these things. It's like they all started saying Build Back Better and Great Reset within weeks of each other. Yeah. And they all agreed to lock down, and that was a completely novel response to a virus. Like, am I crazy to point that out? No, I don't think so. And also when it comes to the domestic violent extremist list that came out on day one of Biden's presidency, following up with all of the rhetoric that we've seen over the past year, it's like, okay, I am once again going down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole a little bit here, but I think we need to be aware of it. We need to be aware that it's very probable that this is the reason that they're doing these things. But I grant you, like, if you start to talk about, with 100% confidence as to, I know exactly what's going on with this. It's like, it's the same thing with, stock pickers. It's like, just put all your money in this. You're like, oh, you're a fraud.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
right
and
away.
I agree with that, and I do the same fucking thing. And I think there's a lot. I think it's important to just like differentiate between what we like know and what we're like
Exactly.
kind of speculating. And then when you're speculating, to explain like, okay, well, this is why I'm speculating that. But with the guys who do pretend this like to have this certainty, all I'm saying is just like what happens with guys like Alex Jones is that the people who hate him will point to all the shit he got wrong throughout all the years and be like, look at this guy. And then the people who love him will point to all the shit he got right. But the only fair response is like, well, if you get credit for the shit you got right, then you also have to take blame for the shit you got wrong. You know what I mean? Or the shit that you like can't prove at all. So it's like, okay, if he gets credit for saying that like, okay, there's like blowback is going to come or something like this, or if he gets credit for saying that like, our relationship with Israel has really provoked a lot of these Muslim countries to hate us. Okay, but then he also has to take the blame for saying in 2001 that we know Iran has the nukes, or he also has to take the blame for particularly for the Sandy Hook thing. And he also has to, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's just, you can't kind of have one without the other if you want to be fair about this shit.
Yeah,
and that's
I completely agree with you, by
that's,
the way. And, that's why Scott Horton is so great, because everything he says he knows in and out. Like, you never doubt anything that he's saying up there, because he knows it.
That's right. And well, Scott's also like a great example. Like, there's a lot of guys, there's some guys who are really, really good, like really smart and really well researched. So these are guys who, like, if you bring them on your show, they're gonna know like 1,000 things about a topic that you're just like, fuck, I don't know as much as this guy knows about it. But when you do that, you almost got to be really sure you can trust them, that they're not taking any liberties with this shit, and kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's why Scott's the best, because you like, not only does he know all of the shit, but you can really trust him that he's not like taking any liberties. And he will tell you, like the thing Clint was saying, that he'll go like, now we don't know this for sure, but here's the reason why we could suspect this, but this we know for sure. And a lot of those other guys, it's almost like, it's like anything else. It's like they have kind of like a superpower, and then it's very tempting to abuse that and to just go like, okay, well, we don't exactly know this for sure, but this guy doesn't know that we don't know this for sure, so I'm just going to tell you we do. And so that's always like, I don't like that quality in people, so I try to kind of like, that's why I'll have Scott on. He's my conspiracy guy for my show. Like, that's as far as I'll go.
That was my whole point, the logic thing too, because like, I mean, I'm not saying these people are frauds at all. Some of these people, I mean, if it's hard to attribute that they're doing it like disingenuously. I think a lot of these people do. Once they learn so much and start connecting dots in their head and don't have it seated in a proper logic system, it just completely fucks them, and they start convincing themselves they're one thing or other. Yeah, I'm sure there are frauds out there, but it is, I mean, I'm sure there are probably, feds out there that are doing some sort of op. I don't know, but I can sympathize, and I do think to some extent you probably could maybe even attribute some benefits. They're kind of pushing the Overton window in certain regards, but it is a crap shot. I am torn when it comes to those, and I sympathize because once you're going down these roads and you realize all the crazy shit there is, it is really hard to keep yourself sane and not jump into one thing or the other. I want to address some super chats before we get moving. I got a Libertarian Podcast, Tyler Yankee. He was just said Dave on recently. He said, just because. Thanks, bud. I got Outlaw Thoughts. $2 spent 9/11 watching War by Deception. And then I have Sean Van Bevert Hoot. Jose, your deep dive series are on point. You deserve more followers. Yes, I do. Please settle for some of my cash. Dave, Clint, Reed, you guys all rock. I endorse all of that.
Nice.
All right.
And for anyone watching right now, after you're done watching this, go watch the OKC series that Jose did with Richard Booth. Really, really incredible. Like, genuinely.
Yeah, I try not to take credit for that because that's all Richard Booth. I completely lucked up, and he is the guy. I think if anybody out there is interested in this, get him on your show because he breaks it down so well and so honestly. He's basically kind of like I call him the Scott Horton of OKC. I call him that all the time. Because I just like, hey, this thing, and he just goes, and all of it backed up by sources. He's a lot like Adam Fitzgerald in that way. But yeah, no, I cannot bring up his name enough. He really is. It is something. We've done like 10 hours on it, and it's insane how deep the rabbit hole goes, and all stuff backed up by sources. But anyways, recently, Dave, you were on Clint's show, and you guys kind of got to the topic of fatherhood and stuff like that, and I'd had you on a while back, and we covered a similar type topic. It was like more centered around like masculinity and what it is to be a man. And I remember I'd kind of considered bringing that topic up, but I figured it was kind of like we didn't really have a rapport like that, and you and Clint did, so I think it worked well there. And I really thought it was like great. That was the highlight of that episode, in my opinion. And I do think there's something to, as men, the male figures you have in your life. So I kind of wanted to hear from like all of you, kind of like what you've taken from that. Because for me, like especially me. Dave, Clint, we've all come from broken homes. Reed's a little bit different. Like I've basically had 3 father figures in my life, and all of them you kind of mixed bag. My dad was a good guy, kind of like but doing the whole weekend dad thing because him and my mom broke up. You kind of lose touch sort of over time. So I don't blame him for that at all. So okay, he's gonna boop. And then I had the next one was my sister's dad, who was abusive, and like I had to deal with that from a young age, like put her in the hospital once or twice. So that was something. So it was like, and then after that I had my stepdad, who was like he was a smart, strong, like physically and mentally man, and he was like kind of biting humor, and like so I kind of like he kind of ended up in a lot of ways being that ideal male role model for me. But then I have my dad who like, in some regards, I think it's kind of hard because I was a little kid, but I do kind of look back and I'm like, why didn't you kind of do more to take me out of the situation? And so like, I guess in a lot of ways, I'm kind of like, he was a nice guy. I like my dad. I love my dad. He's great. But it's like, I don't know. There's something that I feel like I've learned from each one. Like I learned from my second figure, the one who beat my mom, who I don't want to be. Because he was a big, powerful man. Like he was a guy who, wrestled all through high school, the big guy in the block. And like I do feel like it's probably kind of where I learned like I want to have power, but I don't want to use it like that. And like I learned some valuable lessons there.
Well,
and
you learned the right lesson. That's good.
And then for my dad, like he was a good guy, but he's kind of like he wasn't in that way. And then I know I do think there's something to be taken from father figures, and it's an interesting point,
doubt.
Because and I'm interested for you, Dave, because you didn't really. I don't think you really ever. I mean, maybe there was someone in your life that ended up being a male, like a positive male role model from your young age, or were you just really kind of bootstrapping it and just kind of pulling together yourself? I think that's an interesting topic, really.
Yeah, it is an interesting topic. I really didn't, in my early childhood, I really didn't have any positive male role models. And I think that was something that was very painful for me. And I think it was something I was always searching for. Like, you know what I mean? Like that really was something like I knew I was lacking. In high school, I had 2 that were my varsity basketball coach.
I was gonna guess that's normally where it comes from. Yeah.
That and this Coach McMahon was like one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met in my life. He was just incredible, and it was like it was really like it. He really changed my life, and he was it just an unbelievable like kind of like motivational figure, and he was like one of those guys who would almost give you like but this is like before like I mean the internet existed, but it was before there was like YouTube or anything. There weren't like figures like Jordan Peterson or something like that out there. It was like he was like the person who like gave me kind of this this mentality that like you're like quit bitching and figure out what you need to do to get yourself in the place that you want to be. And I just loved it. I just loved like getting that. It was the first time in my life I had ever really had someone like that. I remember he's like all these like dumb sayings he used to yell at us, but like that just was really exactly what I need. Like, quitters don't win and winners don't quit and like stuff like this shit. But really pushed me to like work harder than I'd ever worked at anything and kind of like really aspire to be better. And so I give him a lot of credit. I had one teacher in high school, Mr. Trano, who really kind of like took me under his wing, even though he was fucking pissed off at me because I was failing his class and he knew I was smart, but I was just like never fucking working and anything. He grabbed me by the fucking neck one time and put me up against the wall because I fucking didn't turn a paper in on time. But like, it was kind of like the type of shit I needed. You know, it's not like I was like 17 at the time. I was like, all right, it's fine. I probably could have beat him up already at the time, but I was kind of like, all right, I see what you're doing.
He'd be in prison if he did that these days.
Yeah, probably. If he could have just tried to convince me to be a chick or something, he'd be fine now. But back then, that was all you could do. That was all. But that he was another guy. He was like this tough Italian dude who was very like hard nosed. But I kind of needed a little bit of that in my life. So there was that. And then, later in life, I gotta say, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, like all the libertarian heroes kind of like filled that role for me. Like there definitely was something, I'm sure, that I don't know, psychoanalyze myself, but I'm sure there was really something about Ron Paul that I thought was like really was inspiring to me. That it was like, hey, here's this guy who doesn't need to do this, It's like an older guy who's a doctor and has his family already and doesn't really need to be on a stage getting booed and kind of risking a lot just to tell the truth to everybody. And there's something like there. I mean, I think there's definitely something to that I was like, that is so goddamn compelling that like I want to spend my life doing what that guy did. And so, I think about this more and more, as I'm sure you do, Jose, like for guys like us who kind of didn't have this kind of like stable present father figure, and we have kids now, and when you see the role that a father plays in your kids' lives, you kind of realize more and more what it would be for them to not have that, and you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Yeah. I really get like how much that's just not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah,
I guess those would be some examples for me.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because I think the main thing I got from my dad, my actual biological dad, is kind of that. And because, like I said, he's a nice guy, and I have nothing against him. And I don't know the specific circumstance of him and my mother's divorce, but like he's always been a good guy. But I just know the effect a broken relationship has on it. And for me, like I've been married over 10 years, and I've got to see my kids grow up, and like for me, that was, I guess, in a certain way, because I kind of feel bad for my dad in that way, because it's like I see my kids now, and it's like I can't imagine not having like a close relationship with my kids, or like to be there in their lives constantly on a day-to-day basis. And that's probably been the biggest thing. Anytime I've had issues in my marriage is like, come hell or high water, we're gonna make this work. I know maybe when they're 18 we can talk if it gets really rough, but I'm gonna fucking be here,
No, well, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean by that. Like, dude, I fucking go on like, like I'll be on the road for like 2 days or something like that. And it's like hard. Like I miss not being with my wife and kids for those 2 days. And there is something about that is I think in a way it's kind of like a generational thing. Like there's something about kind of like the baby boomer generation almost like normalized regular divorce. Like not to say that like in extreme situations there isn't divorce, but just like kind of like regular, no fault, just it didn't work out. And we grew up in this generation where I think maybe like, I don't know for you guys, but like for me, like maybe at least half the kids I knew had divorced parents. Like that was just kind of part of life. And to me, I like for me and my wife, it was very clear, like right away when we had our first, that we were both like, okay, well, like there's no option of not being together for the rest of our lives. So whatever problem there is, okay, let's figure out how to solve that if there is one. And of course, in all marriages, there are problems. But like, it's just like, well, let's just take one issue, like one option off the table, which is ever like not being together. That's not an option. So what else are we going to do? And we're both very much on that page. And it's kind of crazy in a way to think. And of course, like to your point, Jose, like the reason is because how the fuck, like how do we have the right to do that to our kids? Like we just don't have the right to do that. You can't do that to them. You can't not have their parents together. And we all know what that was. Like, my wife's parents were divorced. My parents were divorced. Like we kind of know what that is growing up. And so it's like, well, no, that's just not an option. We will work out whatever else needs to be worked out. Now, okay, I'm sure that I have a very good marriage, and I'm married to a really great woman, and I'm very good to her also. So, okay, I'm not saying that applies to every situation, But in general, I do kind of feel like that should be the rule rather than the exception. Like that should be the attitude. Like if you get married and have kids, I'm like, yeah, you kind of have a responsibility to not make these kids' lives way more difficult by not growing up secure in the fact that their parents like love each other and are with each other.
Yeah,
and get to see them both every day.
Yeah, almost everybody I know, all of my best friends, basically, all of their parents were divorced. So very, very common. And I think on the upside, comedians oftentimes talk about this. It's like you have to have a rough childhood to be funny. So I found all the funny people, and they happened to all come from broken homes. It was like, well, that makes sense. And I came from a multi-time broken home. My mom and my dad got divorced when I was 2. And my mom got remarried when I was 5, and then she got divorced again when I was 13 or 14. So, Reed, go ahead and mute that, bud. Jesus Christ.
Reed, are we in the bathroom with you?
No.
So my biological dad, very good role model when it came to work ethic. He was extraordinarily driven to the detriment of everything else in his life. So that was both good and bad. I didn't get really anything else from him besides that, at least early on. I then went and I worked for him for a couple of years after I graduated college, and he and I still have a good working relationship, but it's never traversed that gap to get to a point of really close, loving father-son type dynamics the way I have with my stepdad. My stepdad Charlie, he as I said, my mom married him when I was 5 or 6. And they divorced when I was 13, 14. I still call him dad. He's the one that I teared up when I had Dave on my show because I was talking about him, because he had just had a heart attack a couple months prior, and I guess I hadn't processed that fully. So, but he was a New York guy, Italian, very profane, very funny, kind of a womanizer, just like basically my personality. He just transferred it into me, and he also had a deep love for sports, which really got imbued into my spirit too. And then so I'm very grateful. I've had really good male influences, no abuse, no drug addiction. I'm very fortunate in that regard, and the fact that I have 2 as opposed to 1, even though they both have their own pitfalls, combined between the 2, I feel like I have a really well-rounded male role model. And then weirdly enough, I would say, because Kobe Bryant got drafted by the Lakers when I was a freshman and I was a basketball lover to the highest level, he really inspired kind of my work ethic and my killer instinct in a really profound way that doesn't make a lot of sense to most people. But like the whole Mamba mentality thing, I was just like, I spent from literally sunrise to sundown the entire summer between my freshman and sophomore year, just shooting by myself, just trying to become I'm going to be a professional basketball player. And ultimately I was 6'1" and not that fast. And, like it just wasn't going to happen. It wasn't in the cards, but man, that type of like drive to just see that. And I'm sure that you can get that from a female role model as well. But for the most part, that's usually going to come from a man, because the woman is usually in charge of child rearing. So you're normally going to have that from the male role models in your life. And I think those 3 were probably the ones that formulated my personality the most. And what I hope is that, because so many of people from my generation were, emotionally scarred, and some of us broken because of the divorces that our parents put us through. I think that many of the people from my generation are now redoubling their dedication towards a lifelong commitment when it comes to marriage and child rearing, and I think that we need it desperately. So I'm glad to see that.
Hey Clint, how mad were you at Ari about his Kobe tweet?
It hurt. I'm not gonna lie, it hurt. But I still laughed. I mean, I love dark humor, so it's fine. But if I saw Ari, I would definitely be like, dude, that was wrong. That was.
Dude, believe it or not, he's heard that from a few people. So you wouldn't be the first.
I would imagine.
Dude, I even thought Malice's Ron Paul thing was pretty hilarious, and I love Ron Paul as well.
That one hurt me even more than the Kobe one. Jesus Christ.
I mean, I probably wouldn't have made it, but also he wasn't fucking, I don't know, whatever. I shouldn't even get into this, but it wasn't really a Ron Paul joke. It was a fucking Joe Biden. Like he said, Ron Paul was doing his Joe Biden impression. It was really a slam on fucking Biden, not Ron Paul.
It was just so soon. It was like within hours of the
Yeah, it's just
on
we're
the-
all
I
we're a little
respect it.
sensitive to that guy.
I mean, that's the perfect timing, in my opinion. I love Rob, but I was still like, all right, that's fucking funny. I got to respect it. It is what it is. I want to touch on it real quick. You brought up how kind of Ron became a father figure to you. And I do think, I mean, maybe it was something to do with me, like going off to join the military at an early age. And I feel like there might be something to this traditional picture we have of how kids are supposed to be out of the fucking house at 18 that I think might be detrimental. Maybe out of the house is fine, but I think, maybe local area. I think me leaving my family so soon may have played into, in a, not to sound creepy, but in a weird kind of way, I wouldn't say father figure, but you kind of filled that role as well for me, Dave, in some aspects, because I kind of stumbled on you in the like mid 20s to early 20s, because I think like that was kind of like when I was, you're young, you're starting to figure things out. I do think that played a role for me. Personally, you definitely have changed my life in a lot of ways, for sure. But yeah, anyways, Reed, you haven't got a chance. You're the boring guy that has had his dad here his whole life. And
Yeah.
his life. So, how's that being in a normal family?
Yeah, my dad's great, and I think what the most interesting way I relate to him these days is he's going through a lot of changes that I've gone through over the last 10 years, but he's doing them from 50 to 60 instead of like from 20 to 30. So he was like a hardcore evangelical Christian conservative, and I was too in high school. And then not just with politics, but also with religion. Like he's really had a falling out. He was a deacon at the church when I grew up, and now we have conversations where he tells me stuff like, I don't even know what I believe about this anymore. But like growing up, he was very stern about what was allowed in the house, but he was always willing to talk about any questions I had about anything and not, cast me aside as someone who's questioning things that are unquestionable and shouldn't be allowed to do that. Even though the institutions that I went to were very much that way, you weren't allowed to ask any questions. He would always muse over anything. And that's kind of the attitude I have nowadays with anybody is I'm willing to listen to anybody and hear anybody's argument for anything, because I feel like if you actually believe what you believe, then you'll have a place to stand and you'll actually be able to criticize those person's beliefs instead of trying to block things that are scary and not touch subjects that, might get you in trouble or something. And I kind of learned that from my dad, the way he was with me growing up, when I had lots of these questions. And, I wouldn't have ended up where I am if I hadn't asked questions, and he wouldn't have ended up where he is. So, yeah, I guess that's the biggest takeaway I have.
All right, let's address a couple more super chats. Someone wants to know if you would have Alex Jones on the show. I'm going to go with probably no, but I don't know.
Oh, come on. You'd have him on, wouldn't you, Dave? Why not?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to answer that question like off this, but I have to think about it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. People ask me. I mean, not
My
that I'm
answer
anywhere
is
big
yes.
as you, but like people ask me questions like, "Would you have this person, that person?" Also, obviously, Alex Jones. If he came to me, yes, in a second, just because it'd do wonders for my channel. But I honestly don't really have anything to say to him. I don't really like. Call me crazy. I do him wrong. I like him in certain ways. We kind of talked about him, but for me, it really is just like a natural, organic thing of what do I want to talk about, and then I find the person I want to talk about with. And like for me, like people ask me this all the time. You should have so and so on, or have so and so on, and it's like.
That's me with Dave Rubin. I've had his contact for over a year, and I've just been like, I don't really know what I'm going to talk to him about, so I just haven't had him on. But
yeah, I guess that's an
Alex
question.
Jones has a lot he could talk to you about. That's a little
I would
bit
have
bigger.
Alex on in a heartbeat. Don't get me wrong. I totally would.
Scott was on Kim Iverson's show today.
It was great. Go check it out.
Oh, was it?
Awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
It's only like 26 minutes long or something. So
That's enough for Scott to get out a sentence.
How great was the greatest generation really if they raised the worst generation, boomers?
Ooh,
That's a really
good one.
fair point, by the way. That's actually a really, really great fucking question there, Ofer.
I think there's
but
something to be said for the emotional detachment that came with like the greatest and the silent generation, maybe.
And I will say that it's funny because a lot, like, I'm a big believer in peaceful parenting, and I get like pushback sometimes when I talk about that stuff.
Yeah,
And
that's one way you changed my life real quick. Don't mean to cut you off, but because you were probably one of the biggest things that made me, because I did used to do like spank my kids and stuff because that's how I was raised. But you definitely.
Oh, by the way, I was spanked so much. Like, I know this is a hot topic in libertarian circles.
You guys want to turn out like Reed?
Oh my god!
You want to be a normal?
How did that make you feel, Reed?
I don't, dude. I probably got spanked the most out of all the kids too. Like, it was from.
But you probably deserved it though.
I did. Trust me, I was bad.
And look at him now. Look at the tweets he's sending from New Hampshire.
Where's your dad now?
Spanked.
Yeah,
after he got spanked
that was
like
an interesting conversation with my dad talking about that whole thing because he obviously doesn't know about it. So I was explaining it all to him, and it's just like, that was one of the strangest phone calls I've ever had. But yeah, I got spanked a lot. And I don't know, like I haven't honestly thought about it much until seeing everyone talk about it in libertarian circles, but I think I'm a better person because I got spanked, honestly. Like I got
spanked one time, and it was because I stole the chocolate bars that the band in middle school was selling, and I stole them not to eat them, but to sell them myself for half of the cost and then pocket it. I was a real piece of shit. So Charlie,
that's where you got your capitalist tendencies from, though. You know?
That is pretty goddamn entrepreneurial of you.
Yes.
I mean, that's the red market. Well, we frown upon that.
Well, if I could just say, just the point I'm making toward this shit, right, is that it's like I'll get a lot of people. One of the major pushbacks you get off of the peaceful parenting argument is they'll be like, well, I don't know, Dave. I mean, I see all these punk kids today, and they deserve to be hit. You know, like, oh, I wish someone had hit them, and then maybe they wouldn't be the way they are now. But if you're talking about the way the greatest generation, like handed off to the baby boomers and how we kind of got in this whole mess, I would say that I think one of the, whatever was good about the greatest generation, and there were some things that were good about them, man, were they fucking like it was just completely acceptable to like beat your kids and like I don't even mean spank your kids. I mean like with objects, with belts, with like that. That was just considered. Go talk to people who were raised by the greatest generation and see to how many of them like just getting a belting was normal, and how much. And so I would say that I think that was a major failure on their part. Like, there's no question about it. I mean, look, I think that if, like, for people who want to say, like, and again, we're speaking in generalities. There's lots of exceptions to this. But if people want to say that, like, the boomer generation is filled with, like, all of these people who, are kind of fucked up and, like, don't care about the next generation and did all this fucked up shit, it's like, okay. But in the same sense that I'd go, like, and those boomers will be like, well, look at these millennials and Generation, Z, and these guys are so horrible. And you're like, yeah, but didn't you raise them? Right. I mean, like, could I ever, like, if my kids grow up one day and I go, these kids are so awful, would I not feel like, all right, but you're kind of responsible for them, right? Like, to some degree. And so, yeah, I think it's a completely reasonable thing to say that, like, the greatest generation produced the boomer generation. There's a large failure there. On some level, at least.
My stepdad, Charlie, he was in Catholic school in New York, and he said he would get beat to shit by the nuns.
Yeah,
like it's just unbelievable. And he fell away.
The nuns are the most brutal.
My mother-in-law, my mother-in-law tells stories about that. The nuns just beating them, like it's just horrible stories. Like today, and again, it's like if when you think about it, when you got little kids, it just gives you a different perspective on like they're talking about kids like my kids' age, getting like beat with crazy. A ruler and stuff at school. I mean, come on, man! Like,
give women
have you guys seen that? Have you guys seen that bumper sticker? It's what Ahmed wasn't expecting for virgins when he got to heaven, and it's all these nuns with shotguns. That's like one of the best.
Got TopLobsta, four of my favorite degenerates talking about role models. You should have been here. But okay, definitely, guys, go check out TopLobsta.com. He's got pretty much all of our art there.
Top's got time to pay $5 and leave a comment, but doesn't have time to talk with his boys. Yeah, it is funny though, right? Like I'll tell you, there's something about that I always love. And like maybe that's, I don't know, maybe it says something about my brain or our brains or something like that. But there was always, I remember, I know I mentioned this before, but like when Ayn Rand was describing the Rothbardians and she described them as hippies of the right. and that was like supposed to be a big insult to her.
Yeah.
But to me, I was always like, that sounds fucking awesome. Like that's
Yeah.
exactly what I am. Like a right-wing hippie. Yeah, that's exactly right. And like there's something like Ron Paul being like the country doctor, most conservative person ever who's like anti-war and thinks heroin should be legal. And I was just like, I love that. You know, like I don't know, whatever it is, like this kind of like this thing that's like just wrecking the dichotomy. I love that. And there is something kind of cool about like, I don't know. It's like Jose, like you, for as much what your persona is or whatever, like, and what my persona is on Legion of Skanks and shit like that, for us to be the guys who like, no, want to sit down and talk about like, oh, it's really important to be like a good father and like, who are your role models? I don't know. I just, for whatever that is, I like that. I like kind of like that we exist in this weird world where we're like, yeah, I guess this is kind of a contradiction, but in some ways I don't think it is. And I don't know.
Do hear it if you want.
That's
it's not
cool
my
to
covenant community.
Yeah, right.
Rape joke followed by peaceful parenting lecture. This is what we do.
Yes, literally. That's why Louis J. Gomez is my best friend.
Yeah,
like that's he's a walking contradiction. You know.
Say what you want about Alex Jones, but introducing me to Ron Paul, which turned me into a libertarian. I think that happened to a lot of people.
There you
in
go.
the way.
That's I can't argue with that.
Reads my mom.
That makes sense. That's
Quince your dad.
Let's see. I think that's all we got right now. All right. Next one. This is a hot one. Everyone wants to talk about this, but I think I might take a different angle than a lot of people want to. The LPNH thing. All right. The whole Meghan McCain thing. What I want to talk about is I think it's very interesting. I put out a tweet and it was I don't remember the exact wording, but it was like the Venn diagram of people that were outraged about this and the people who are sucking off the queen is damn near a circle. And I think, and don't get me wrong, I get it if you don't like the McCain tweet. I get it. But to then also on the flip side, then be like, when the queen dies, to be like, oh my God, she's so glorious. I'm specifically talking about our people. And it's kind of the point of like, do you really hate the state? Like, do you really, like, I get it, like, centrist or whatever, that's a different story. But for our people, I found it very, quite eye-opening, some of the people who were, on one hand outraged about that, on the other hand, bloviating about the queen and how great she was, which, say what you want about the queen and her family. My opinion is she had a closet full of skeletons. If you start digging into it, I mean, most people in America don't know a ton about her. I don't even know a ton about her. I know enough to not like her.
I know more about her son than anything.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on, but I'm not like, I'm not exactly understanding your point. So you're saying there's, on one hand, that would almost seem consistent to me. On one hand, they didn't like you denigrating, the John McCain's funeral and Meghan McCain crying, and on the other hand, they also were praising the Queen. So I'm just not following exactly. Like,
well,
what's
my
the
specific point is people in our camp, the ones who who are, the whole anti-state.
He misphrased it. He meant to say, on one hand, you say you hate the state, but on the other hand, you cry when these people die, I think is what he meant to say. He kind of misphrased.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. And I know there are people who did it, outside of our circles, and that's a different question. I'm more speaking about people in our circles. I'm not going to name names. I could, but I found it to be quite something to see the people who were going on about that. But at the same time, were outraged about the other thing. It's like, I get it, being like, hey, that was bad tech. Honestly, I'm of the opinion anyone who's really outraged about it, I find that to be silly. I get not liking it, but to be like, how dare you? I think these are people worthy of derision. Now, whether you think it should be something from an official account or messaging, if it works well, different story. But so far as
really, that's the whole story.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, I don't know. I just feel like this is being a little bit set up in a way to like dunk on a point. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think libertarians should be like fucking like, I don't know, whatever, like celebrating when John McCain dies or when the Queen dies or something like that. I don't really give a shit about the Queen as much. That's like almost a little bit different. She's like she was a pretend queen. I don't know. It's a little, but I think the question is really more, do people go like, is that what should be tweeted from an official account? And I will look, like, I don't know. I feel a little bit weird. Like, if we want to really get into this, we can get into this. But I think that I've always like tried to keep my critiques of New Hampshire and their Twitter account behind closed doors, because I'm like, I don't really want to like if I have an issue with them, then okay, I'm not gonna like pile on publicly. I'll go in private channels and like kind of be like, hey guys, listen, this is what I think, and because I think that's like more the appropriate way to handle it. But I do feel like, particularly in the last few weeks, with a lot of people who I think are really being unfairly piled on for their responses to that tweet and a few other ones as well, and then again with just yesterday, where that Justin guy, who I guess is somewhat high up in New Hampshire, now making it public and not only going after Michael Malice and Michael Heiss and Angela McArdle and myself, I guess, and like completely misrepresenting what actually happened in response to that. I almost feel like I'm kind of pushed to like say something publicly about it, which is not really what I wanted to do to begin with, but. Yeah, dude, like none of that is really the argument. I know me and Reed have talked about this like privately, but no, I don't know. It's completely reasonable to go, yeah, I'm not going to worship the queen after she dies, obviously. Like that's not what I'm going to do. But I also think this is kind of like obviously just awful messaging and really idiotic to be coming from a blue check official political party account. That this is not the way to message radically the way we want to. And that the fact that even if we may want to have like really radical messaging, but at the same time, what's the goal here? Like, I don't know what the goal for everyone else is here, but the goal for me of using the Libertarian Party was to create a giant movement. And I think we have the potential here right now, not because we're better than Ron Paul, just because the circumstances are much better for us than when he was running, to create a movement magnitudes of order bigger than what Ron Paul created, and to get way more people believing in libertarianism. And then if we get to a point where we have like 10, 20 million people who are like on board, real radical liberty-loving people, we can really pursue some strategies that can be interesting. And if that's the goal, then something that's going to like kind of turn off almost everyone except the Tower Power Gang, like, you know what I mean? Like, is probably not smart messaging and just comes off like wrong. So that I think is a completely reasonable take. And I got to tell you, I've been really, there's very few times in the last 10, 15 years where I've really felt like what I would consider my camp of libertarians were making arguments where I was like, that's just flat out the wrong argument. Like, this just doesn't make sense. But in the response to this shit, I've been really kind of like taken aback, like seeing people like kind of argue like, you know, just like like going at Spike Cohen and being like, well, if you're more offended by this tweet than you are by the wars, then you're a sellout. And you're like, but Spike isn't more offended by this tweet than he is by the wars. He's more offended by the wars. He just also thought this tweet was bad.
Yeah,
and then like,
man, garbage.
And yeah, and then like to watch people like, you know, like Justin. I mean, I just couldn't. I told him. I said it. He made it public, so I said it publicly too. I go, dude, I think this is fucking retarded. I think you're being stupid. You're fighting with Michael Malice about what? That you called him out and he responded to you like that. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that's great. Now, so now I see Lydia from fucking the booker for Tim Pool's show, who has booked me and Clint and Scott Horton, and Michael Heiss, and you know what I mean, Maj Touré and Eric July, and put all of our like biggest, you know, like people in front of 1 million listeners, just giving them their over and over and over again. And now she tweets something and I see my people like trashing her because she didn't like one tweet. Like, do you guys have any sense of like fucking what are we trying to do here, man? This is so stupid. Like, I just don't like. I'm actually kind of taken back and blown away. And it's like, no, like I've expressed behind the scenes many times about things that I thought that New Hampshire was tweeting, where I'm like, this is really counterproductive and stupid. It's not helping what we're trying to do. And if you want to like kind of like, as I've seen so many do, conflate that with, oh, now you're being a bitch, or you're like kind of like compromising on the message, as if it's the same thing to say, hey, I don't think we should oppose lockdowns, as it is to say, hey, I don't think we should say send blacks back to Africa. You know what I mean? Like, as if those are the same thing. It's like, no, there's a really stupid way to do radical messaging, and there's a really good way to do radical messaging. And it's good that we're not the bitches of the like former LP regime, but I don't know, dude. I'm just not seeing this as being an intelligent way to use our platform. And it's certainly not, like, it doesn't make any sense to be alienating people who are, like, our most powerful allies. So, yeah, is there some hypocrisy between some people who, like, were saying nice shit about the Queen or whatever? I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure if that is actually hypocrisy. Maybe at some point they're just going, a lot of people care about this, so let me be nice. That's not my style. I'm not going to do that. But I can certainly understand where people would have an issue with the New Hampshire tweets.
I have one quick question.
Please, by the way, before you say this, please someone give me pushback on this so we
Yes.
can argue. Because I see
but-
everyone online like really like making an argument about this. So give me all the arguments that are happening so I can wreck them all.
Real
Okay,
quick,
perfect.
before you go into Clint, I do want to say this is not the angle I was going, clearly. Maybe I did a bad job going to it, but, you know, the Band-Aids
Well,
ripped
this is
off.
where we are
Yeah,
now,
this is
Jose.
where we are. You
You
guys
did
go.
this. I have one significant empirical evidence point that I think demonstrates that maybe it's not the worst idea. First off, we are a decentralized movement, so I like having 50 laboratories of innovation where we're all trying different things. That's one. But two, what other state affiliate account has had the type of press, the amount of press, and the amount of attention that's been drawn to them as LPNH has had over the past 30 days? I would say that none have had anywhere close to the attention. Now, you could obviously
But
counter
what
with
measure is that, Clint?
some of it's negative.
But
Of course.
what measure is that's a ridiculous measure.
Well,
Okay,
if you're
we should
trying to grow an
wait,
audience, you need reach.
Sure, yeah, we should deny Sandy Hook and say that fucking the Holocaust never happened.
No.
That no, Clint, that'll get
Do
you
you
press.
think that's what they're doing?
Clint, no. But I'm just saying, if your standard is what got press, so like, okay, so come out tomorrow and
the
say
press-
the Holocaust never happened and Sandy Hook never happened,
Okay,
and
but the-
we will get
but-
press. Except,
but
what's
the-
the problem? What's the problem with that? Is that both those things are wrong, and that's not what we stand
But
for.
that's the
so
point.
the measure
is that it's
can't. The
wrong.
measure
There's
can't
no
just
truth
be.
there. There was
So-
with the LPNH thing. There was this, we hate war criminals and we hate their fucking propagandists. Obviously, I don't think it was directed at McCain, because if you said a casket, it would have been whatever. But I think there is a point to that. I think there should be a social cost for advocating for wars, and I don't personally have an issue with that.
Okay, but I'm just saying, okay, because now the goalposts are kind of moving here. I'm just saying that the measure of we got press for this is not good. By the way, you know what's the most press the Libertarian Party ever got? Was that fucking fat idiot stripping on stage. We got covered in everything for that, didn't we? Yeah, we sure did. But we looked like assholes for doing it, right? So
Sure.
the measure can't be, oh, we got press for this. And if you're going to say there's truth in the point, like, yeah, I mean, there's truth in the point that we hate war, but is that, can you not kind of see that that's a little bit convoluted when you just tweet the picture of a daughter crying over her father's corpse? That maybe the message there isn't like, oh, we're so humanitarian that we hate war. The message might be kind of like, it seems like you guys are kind of the like cold, awful, bad ones who have no feeling for what's going on here. Like, I'm not even saying you should have feelings for Meghan McCain crying for her father's death, but it's just like, I don't know, dude. Like, think about how this comes off to every, like all I'm saying is my whole goal is to be able to reach a lot of normal people with this message. And the overwhelming vast majority of people who you reach with that message are going to go, holy shit, dude, that just seems like evil. And our message is supposed to be that war is evil. But all that's putting out there is that, like, you guys seem like the evil ones who are heartless. I don't know. And then that's not even like, you know, to me, I think it's way worse to have the fucking the 6 million thing and all that. I just think it's like really, really bad. First of all, I'll say number one, the fucking, to me, the 6 million joke has been run completely into the ground. Just like as a comedian, I'm like, I don't even get it. I don't even chuckle when I see these jokes on Twitter anymore. And like, if you want to do it on your personal account, fine. But look, I'm me. Like, just to be clear, I don't give a fuck what the bitches who fucking tattletale and whine about us all day say, fuck all of them. And you see me, if you follow anything I do, I go as hard at them as possible. I'm the destroyer of those fucking bitches. I'm the one who they fucking like think about all day of how to get. They're trying to run Oppo research on or whatever. I don't fucking care. And I say any joke I want to on Legion of Skanks because I don't fucking care about any of this shit. But it's like, I don't know, dude. There's a fucking time and a place for this shit. And like, it's a little bit different to like, it's a very different thing for like the Tower Power podcast to be making fucked up jokes and for a blue check political party, Twitter, to be making like those jokes. It sends a different fucking message. It sends a message like, oh, are you really trying to say that you don't think 6 million people in the Holocaust died? And like, why is that the message you're trying to send? And honestly, we got a whole lot of things that we're trying to say, and that's really not what we're trying to say. Like, right. I might, I'm the guy I've talked to like a whole bunch of fucking racialists, I've talked to a whole bunch of alt-right guys, and I'm fine to talk to them. I don't think anything should be like off limits. I think, hey, let's have a conversation and work this out. But our movement is not about that. It's not about that. That's not what we're here for. We're not here because we fucking like really think there's this Jewish conspiracy. We're not here because we think like different racial groups have different what I mean? Like go back to Africa, this fucking retarded shit. That's not what our movement about. Our movement is about fucking being anti-war and anti-Fed and anti-authoritarian and all that shit. So I don't think this is good. And I know this is like, now it's like created this thing where it's almost like a divide amongst our camp. But I feel like, I'm watching like Angela, who's doing such a great fucking job and just trying to be like, hey, look, I got to like kind of be like objective here and say, look, I understand why some people really have a problem with this. And then I'm watching people jump on her and be like, oh, you're a sellout. You're the same as Sarwalk or something. Like, that's the same. It's the same as being like, we shouldn't oppose the lockdowns, to saying like, yeah, we shouldn't be tweeting 6 million jokes from official accounts. Like, come on, guys. This is fucking like, this is stupid. And at least like fucking recognize that. This is, I saw even Justin was saying the other day, he's like, first off, he's completely twisting what fucking happened. Where he's like,
all right, well, hold on.
Let me just finish this one and then you go ahead.
Okay,
but he's completely twisting what happened when he says like, oh, you guys are just worried about your donors. And so you want us to stop because of your fucking donor base or something. It's like, dude, listen, no one's saying that. What we're saying is that it's like, we're trying to create something big here. We're trying to raise millions of dollars over the next few years. We're trying to bring 100,000 people into this party in the next year. That's where our goals are. And this type of messaging is a death blow for trying to do any of that shit. So, yeah, that's the point. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Reed.
All right, so I do have to defend Justin just a little bit because that is what we were told. And I didn't want to get into the nitty-gritty of this. I didn't want to talk about the stuff that was private. So I wanted to call you and talk to you before we did the show, but I just got to defend him on that. Like, that is what he was told, so that is what he's reacting to, and he's not here, can't speak for himself. But as far as the 6 million joke, we took that down like 2 days before it got traction, and it actually went out before the McCain one went out. And we took it down because we thought it missed the mark. It wasn't conveying the message we thought. We were going for... there was Nina Turner that actually tweeted out like $25 hour minimum wage now. And then Hannah Cox said 100 or you're a racist. So being New Hampshire, we were just we weren't trying to insinuate that the Holocaust didn't happen or anything. And I could see how you could extrapolate that. But
you didn't even quote tweet that. You just tweeted it.
No.
His defense, he told me later in private chats, he was like, we should have quote tweeted. So
yeah, no. So that one we're not
deleted.
That's why it's gone. So no one in New Hampshire is arguing about that one. Like, we all agree that one was a fuck up. And like a few months ago, there was one on Civil Rights Day that also got taken down because it didn't convey the message that we wanted. So like, yeah, I mean, when we take a tweet down, we're not going to defend it and say, yeah, this was good. That's why we took it down. So I just want that on the record that everyone on the comms team, everyone, working for New Hampshire, even if people weren't offended by it, all of us are like, yeah, that one didn't work, and that's why it's gone. The McCain one, I don't think we regret that one. Like, I certainly understand where you're coming from, and I personally have said I was not surprised at all by how Justin Amash reacted to it, and I didn't care because that's what I'd expect him to do, and that's fine, and that's who he is. He is a respectability politics guy. So it's like, okay, it's Justin, whatever. And then same with Spike. I talked to Spike on the phone like a couple days after when this thing blew up, and he and I are totally cool. And I was like, yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. Whatever. So like, we're really not trying to cause this divide. And I feel like there might be miscommunication happening on both sides, that like we're standing 100% by everything we did and we hate you guys or something. And that's just not true. We did backtrack on some of it because some of it was a misstep. But we don't feel that way about all of it. I mean, as far as the press goes, we got a tiny sliver of press over the 6 million tweet. The McCain stuff was like 100-fold times the press that we got. And most of the articles were talking about how we accused McCain of being a warmonger who made deals with terrorists and neo-Nazis. And I mean, and it said like they wouldn't back down after they said this, and they stood strong in their claims saying that we hate war criminals, blah, 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 whatever. So you did have some negative blowback from it, but to say that the press that we didn't garner any press that was a net negative, I don't think. I mean, a net positive.
No, I don't.
I totally agree with that. So
to be clear, I'm not saying you didn't garner any press attention. That's like obviously a fact.
No, I mean,
good.
Press attention. I think so. I think a lot of it was good, especially in New Hampshire. And this is the thing Clint's talking about. Like, I mean, and you and I have always disagreed on this a little bit. I actually went back and watched the first video we did together, and it was about.
You talk about me or Dave?
Dave.
Okay.
I went back and watched the first video we did together, and I even thought this back then, like, why does the entire Libertarian Party and every section of it need to have the exact same messaging? Like, I feel like there is this push to like make every single party affiliate exactly the same and have like this Ron Paul 2.0 message. And I think like the National Libertarian Party definitely should have that message. And I think the National Libertarian Party messaging has been pretty good. But like when Texas says something that's kind of lame, I don't know. It's like, all right, whatever. That's Texas. Texas is fighting the Republican Party more than the Democrat Party in Texas. So they're going to have their lame way of doing whatever they do. And if people want to change that in Texas, that's fine. And then if New Hampshire, where the Libertarian Party, frankly, is more of a messaging tool. Like I voted in a Republican primary today because I wanted to vote for a Republican for Senate, even though I'm on Jeremy Kauffman's campaign. That's just the realisticality of how it works. Like we could get... most of the people in the state house in New Hampshire who are free staters are Republicans. Some of them are also members of the Libertarian Party, but they run as Republicans. And the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire is just there to shame them into being better. And so I don't know.
Look,
that's my case.
No one's saying that all the state affiliates have to be the same. I mean, I don't know who's making that argument. I'm certainly not. But when Texas has their god-awful messaging, that fucking sucks. And it makes all of us look terrible. So I'm not saying like, oh, if they want to be that way, that's okay. And when New Hampshire has their terrible messaging, it fucking sucks. And it makes all of us look terrible. And you know what? The truth is, dude, that it's like most people, what they actually see of that, the vast, vast, vast majority of people, what they see of that is they say Libertarian Party, blue check, and there's the picture. They don't fucking read the entire article. They certainly, the vast majority of people, don't really go, oh, they were making a nuanced point about war or about any of this other stuff. It's a small, small fraction of the people who actually see that, who realize that. And like, Reed, if you want to go back to our first conversation was all about like, hey, look, there's like all these good libertarians. And then there's this small sliver of like what do you call them, bitch fuck cunts or whatever, like you're like fuck those guys, but the rest of these people should all be kind of like on the same page, that like we're fighting toward this same general goal. And look at what the result of this has been. It's just to fucking like divide everyone against each other and push anyone in the middle who is maybe willing to hear us out that we are the worst caricature of what the old like dishonest guard was claiming that we were. And so this is like bending over backward to justify just really bad messaging. And again, it's not, look, dude, it's not, just to be clear, it's not that I'm saying in any way tone down the radicalism. What pissed me off about, in one of many ways, of what Justin was saying was he was going, oh, like National was telling us to back off of the McCains. But no one was ever saying back off of the McCains. Go as hard against the McCains as you want. The point was just that, like, showing a daughter hysterically crying over her father's corpse to most people evokes an image of, like, Jesus Christ, dude. Leave that alone. And then you could say, oh, we deleted all of these other tweets, so therefore they don't count or something like that.
No.
But whatever, you still
count.
tweeted them. Don't tweet shit like
count.
that. It's a goddamn nightmare. It's the worst thing you could do. It's the worst thing in the world you could fucking do. Literally, if you wanted to fucking destroy this movement, that would be a great strategy. A great strategy would be like, hey, let's make everyone think that we're secretly fucking, like, basically we're neo-Nazis, you know? And, like, I understand that's not what you meant by it. I understand that. I know that. I know you don't mean that. I know Jeremy doesn't mean that. I know all those guys don't mean that.
Right,
but
Dave.
That's what it comes off like to most people.
Okay, so clarification between we fucked up and it doesn't matter. None of us are saying it doesn't matter and that it doesn't have any negative effects. We're just saying that we fucked up because a lot of people are acting like we're not saying that. So I'm not saying that it has no repercussions once you delete it. Wasn't trying to make that argument. I'm just saying that we do realize that that is the case and we're not standing behind everything we've done.
All right, fair enough. I'd just say, like, man, to everyone, like, at least have, I don't know, maybe other people are in this for, like, a different reason than I'm in this to some degree. But, like, the thing that just drives me crazy, man, is seeing, like, fucking, like, the people, like, going after our, like, allies. Like that like I said before, like I got to watch like Lydia or like these people getting like piled by my people on Twitter, like calling them all sellouts and making these fucking videos, you know, like even the things like, oh, let's shit on Spike Cohen and Justin Amash. Dude, Spike Cohen and Justin Amash, and like I have obviously some disagreements with both of them. More with Justin Amash. Spike is a genuinely just like, I think, great dude and a friend of mine. And I think probably most people who know him like agree with this. These guys fucking stood up for New Hampshire when the fucking party was stolen from them. They fucking stood up. And then to see that they come out and like criticize what a completely reasonable criticism of some of these New Hampshire tweets, and then they're just getting fucking attacked for that. It's wrong, dude. And it's wrong that like Angela's getting like shit for this. Like you're putting her in a fucked up situation. And you know what, Reed? Like honestly, dude, I'll just tell you this. A huge part of the reason why you guys have the New Hampshire Libertarian Party is because of what I did and what Michael Heiss did. That's it. I'm not saying that's the whole thing. I'm not saying like it's not a lot of other people did work too, but that's a big part of it. And like we kind of like, you know, it's like we did this with like a thing of like, hey, we're going to be the Ron Paul caucus. It wasn't like we're going to be the 4chan caucus. That was the idea. Now, I'm not saying we're Ron Paul. We're a different generation. We're fucking, obviously, we're going to be fucking edgier and not, you know, as gentlemanly as he was and all this. It's a different fucking time and all of that. But that's what the goal was to be with this. And what you guys have ended up doing is kind of like branding now the takeover as this is what the takeover was about. And I just think that it's like, obviously, we have no authority over the people in New Hampshire. Yeah, it's like this is a decentralized movement. You guys can do what you want to. But I do wish that like you like at least those guys, you know, it's like again, I know I'm picking on Justin a little bit because he was making all this shit public. I probably wouldn't have said anything publicly if he hadn't made all of this public. But he's like, oh, it's so fucked up that you guys tried to come in here and like throw your weight around. And it's like, dude, we had fucking private conversations with the people involved and tried to say like, hey, you know how we had this whole like movement that like got you guys this thing? So try to not fuck over what we're doing. That's all I'm saying.
I gotta chime in. I think personally for me, obviously I'm not even a party member, but this is actually part of the reason probably why I'm not. I personally am of the opinion the McCain thing was the best anti-war messaging I've seen from it, because my personal opinion is I'm more concerned about quality than I am quantity. And don't get me wrong, I love everyone here. You know, we can have disagreements. I would rather have a torch in the sky of anyone who agrees with it, anyone who hates the state. Hey, this is what you fucking these are your people. And if you're meh, okay, well maybe whatever. But if you kept bringing up most people suck. Most people just follow. And so I think, you know, there is something to having bold messaging, even to this extent. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can agree with some of the examples you brought up are off. But for this one personally, to me, this displays fuck warmongers and fuck their propagandists as well. And
Oh,
that's
let me-
my personal opinion.
Let me just say, if you believe that most people suck and that most people follow, how many people are you going to get to follow you with that style of messaging? And I think that you're not going to get a lot, because most people are going to look at that and as Dave has already made quite clear, they're not going to dig deep. They don't know that Meghan McCain has propagated what her father has pushed. And for the record, I didn't have an issue with that particular tweet. I didn't like the 6 million one. I don't like 6 million jokes either. As you can tell by my Twitter account, I don't ever make jokes like that. It's just, I don't think they land, and I think it's like the cost benefit is fucking way out of whack. But I do like the idea of denigrating the legacy of what we consider warmongers, and in reality are warmongers. Sorry, the lightning's going crazy. So I don't know. It's kind of a fine line, and I obviously, based off of my own messaging style, I lean closer to Dave's camp, but at the same time, I do like the decentralized aspect of trying different things, seeing where the line is, and hopefully not going too far over it that you lose people. So I don't know. I'm torn.
Well, I mean, it's just like, okay, so it's not a matter of saying that like we shouldn't have bold messaging. It's just like, I don't know. It's like this already, I feel like you're getting into this kind of like false dichotomy of like, you're like, well, I think we should have bold messaging and hold up our flag for people to come over here, because most people, like, obviously that's what I'm all about. That's literally what I do. So I'm not arguing with that. But at the same time, if I had bold messaging that was like, I don't know, like if you know, if I were to just be like, hey, I fucking hate black people, end the wars. That's bold, you know? But it's also fucking stupid and doesn't like get across the message that we're trying to get across at all. So the point is that it's like, if it's so easy to be misinterpreted, and there's so many people who maybe even would have responded to your flag, like maybe even would have like been open to what you're saying. Like, look, you easily could have been like tweeted that picture, and the message could have been like, this is very sad, but you know what? All of the millions of victims of McCain's wars, blah, 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 didn't have funerals like this. And so, I don't know. I'm just off the top of my head, not constructing a tweet. But there could have been a message that was still really bold, but also wasn't just going, happy holidays, here's a girl crying over her dead dad's corpse, you know? Or here's a guy. So I don't even know. I don't even understand how this is a fucking argument, to be honest. Like, this is just like too insane to me. But okay, fine. If that's what you think we should do, if that's what you think we should do, then fine. Have fun with your fucking 16 people who really believe in fucking anarcho-capitalism with you. Fine. Okay. I guess you guys know how to fucking start a movement, so go start it. But this shit sure ain't it.
All right. I want to remind everybody, I love you all.
I love everybody too, but I'm just fucking right about this, and you guys are wrong. So I don't know what to say.
Disagree.
Yes, we do, and one of us is right and one of us is wrong.
Yeah, I could agree with that. But anyone who brought super chats rehashing this, I'm sorry, I'm not bringing it up because I want to change the fucking dynamic here. All right, let's focus on something we can agree on. People who don't like Hop and how they were also all fucking the same people who were loving on the Queen. I find that dichotomy to be kind of fucking
Is
hilarious.
Reed dead or frozen? I'm concerned.
Is
You know
he
what?
pooping?
I'm just now noticing.
Reed, are you shitting yourself right now? I'm sorry.
I thought he was just.
But by
dead
the way,
serious
you know,
all
I
the
fucking listen. But can I just say real quick before we move on? I'll be quick with this, I promise. But obviously, I love Reed, and I fucking Reed's my guy. I've done everything I can to fucking promote Reed. I love Jeremy Kaufman. I think the "War is Gay" commercial was to me the best piece. That was the best piece of like libertarian messaging, because it was so clear, right? It's like, it's so clear what the joke is. And if you're going to use like humor, that's the way to do it. It's like when he's like, I'm the chief diversity officer at Halliburton. It's like, you already get it. You get what the joke is. And the dishonest like bitches could say whatever they want to, but obviously the joke isn't ha ha, fuck gay people or fuck trans people. It's that, oh, this is the cloak that the evil regime uses to justify, like obviously the real tragedy is innocent civilians dying, not whether there's trans people dropping the bombs on them or not. It's just like, that's it. If you're going to go for it, you got to at least make it clear what your point is, what our point is. Libertarians have something different to offer. And it's not just that we're the most fucked up ones who don't even care when you cry at your dad's funeral. You know the truth, dude? The truth? I know Meghan McCain, okay? I've been on several panels with her. I disagree with her about everything. She refused to do shows with me anymore. She hates me. She hates my fucking guts. And I also kind of think she used her father's funeral as like a publicity stunt.
Yes.
But even when I just look at that picture, I don't know. I think of like fucking
It still elicits real
it's still
human emotion.
like, I don't know, dude. It's like her father's corpse in front of her. So anyway, that's all I'm saying. Reed, you missed the point where I was saying how much I loved you and loved Jeremy
I'm
Kaufman.
sure.
But
He
anyway,
did not
I
say that.
was.
He was shitting on you so hard.
I go. I regret ever promoting Reed.
Promoting
No.
Reed. Look what it did for me. Yeah.
No, but I do mean that. I love all of you guys, and I think that when New Hampshire hits, they do really great, and that's why I've always tried to like kind of keep this shit kind of like, listen, this is what I think. This is where I think you guys are really hitting. This is where I think you're missing. But I also do, whatever. I just feel like a lot of times when I've said this fucking shit, I've been, and this is not you, Reed. This is way before you were even in New Hampshire. You were out.
Yeah,
in
I want to
Utah.
point that out. Like it was, I joined the social media for New Hampshire because I was obviously cut out for it. And a lot of people think I make all the tweets now. That's not true. I don't make every tweet.
He's lying.
People
It's
get
every
us
single one
confused.
thing.
Yeah.
No, I know that. But a lot of times before you were there, so nothing to do with you, but a lot of times I'd kind of like give my take like, hey, you guys shouldn't be doing it this way. And it was kind of like I was just dismissed. Like, oh, no, we know what we're doing up here in New Hampshire. And that's fine. But it also is like, there's a little bit different. Like a wartime concierge is a little different than a fucking like, like we were at war with the party. We took over the party. And now our job is a little bit different. It's a little bit different than it was before. Anyway, I'm sorry, Jose. Switch topics.
Oh, can I just make one? Oh, never mind.
Oh my God! God damn it, Reed!
I don't have
Say what you
to.
guys say.
No, Reed needs to. I think for
Go ahead.
the
Okay,
LPNH
fine.
I'm
people.
fucking with you. Say what you guys say.
So, I mean, I speak on behalf of not just myself. The New Hampshire guys are great, and I'm glad Dave. I know Dave thinks that, and we love Dave too. It's
I love Dave.
We all
We
love
all
each
love
other.
Dave.
It's all kumbaya. But I think 9 times out of 10, New Hampshire's tweets have done their purpose. Like, and I mean, for example,
I agree.
the controversial ones, not just like the normal ones. The child labor tweet that caused all sorts of hell and got Gary Johnson to come out of the woodwork when he hadn't even commented on the lockdowns to come out and say, this is not what libertarian, blah, blah, blah. And if I remember, like a lot of our people didn't like that either. They were like, I'm not so sure about this. That is law in New Hampshire now. A few months after that tweet went out, the legislature passed a law that removed most regulations surrounding child labor for when you're under 18 or if you're going to work outside of school hours. Like they got rid of a lot of laws, and Sununu signed it into law.
Let me just ask you, and that one wasn't one I had a problem with, but was that related to the tweet?
I mean, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, in New Hampshire, things are different than they are in the rest of the country. In the rest of the country, people might have been saying, like, holy shit, you guys are going to kill every opportunity we have to ever get this on the ballot. And, now no one's going to listen to this messaging anymore. In New Hampshire, 3 months later, it became law. And that tweet, when it went out last year, it was a 10 on the Richter scale. I mean, you got everybody to come out and, say what an awful thing it was. If we made that exact same tweet today, it would be a 3 or a 4. So I think there is something to be said about shifting the Overton window. And yes, we have fucked up a couple times, and, we've admitted that we've fucked up. But I think, like, for the most part, the strategy is working. In New Hampshire, you can say like a lot of stuff that you can't say in the rest of the country.
Listen, I don't know. I don't know about that. I didn't fucking have a problem with that tweet, and I don't fucking know about like what connection that had to the laws actually being changed. But again,
it's not the connection. It's just the
right.
idea
Well, if it didn't
of,
have
what you're allowed to say.
But even if it didn't, but that's what I mean by the connection. But I'm just saying, like, again, this isn't like a question of the Overton window. It's like, I'm not saying like, oh, like dude, I'm no less anti-war than fucking that New Hampshire tweet is. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no like, it's not like, oh, you've shifted the Overton window in terms of what actual views are. Like, oh, now you can be really anti-war because of this tweet. So it's not a matter of saying like, oh, what the like you've moved the opinion over here or something like that. Any more than fucking Vermin Supreme putting that dumb fucking boot on his head or that guy stripping on stage is shifting the Overton window. It's just a matter of like, do you want to do this? If you're talking about these ideas, do you want to do this in a way that seems like somewhat serious and professional,
Okay,
and
but
that
the guy
someone might
stripping on
respond.
stage, I don't understand like what conversation he opened up. Now, if you say something like really like aimed at Meghan McCain or John McCain and their legacy and how despicable it is, it's nothing in compared to what we said. And even though the message is just as strong and what your view on war is no different, like when Spike Cohen gets asked about the tweet and he says like John McCain is a despicable war criminal who's responsible for the deaths of millions of people. That's an incredibly easy thing for him to say now, because he doesn't have to be the one to broach the subject to be like, well, we really shouldn't be actually glorifying this guy because he's actually a real piece of shit. Instead, now there's this huge opening where he could be like, well, I actually think that was a little tasteless. But let's be clear, this is who John McCain really is. I think there's
I don't know. I just
so.
look, dude, I just fucking completely disagree with that. I think that the truth is that normally Spike Cohen would be able to say what he always would have said, which is that John McCain is a despicable human being for his awful track record on war.
He would have been
that would have sounded like, wow, something really powerful to sound. But instead now he's got to start by apologizing for how fucking like insensitive and shitty this fucking image was, and then go, like kind of caveat it, and now he sounds weaker because he's caveating it with like, well, John McCain was really bad, but at the same time, I don't really support like showing a like hysterical daughter over her father's corpse as a way to do it. I just disagree that that's like moving the Overton window and making him more safe now or something like that. And again, I know you're acknowledging that those other tweets were misses, but certainly like none of that other shit moves the Overton window. It's not like fucking like, oh, like making the 6 million jokes or fucking joking about like sending blacks back to Africa, which I don't even understand.
Yeah.
Like none of that moves the Overton window. It's just
right, but that's
it's just
not the argument.
It's so right. I know, but I'm just saying these were things tweeted by the account. So it's just like, don't tweet those things.
We agree.
That's kind of it. All right, good. We agree.
on
So
that.
don't
Yeah.
fucking.
Last super jet, sort of on the topic. We're fucking moving on. All right.
All right.
All right, I agree the message behind the McCain tweet was, or I agree with the message behind the McCain tweet, but for fuck's sake, it was imprecise. You need context or side by side with the victims' policies or something additional. Before everyone jumps in, I want to give my. I said last one. This dude gave a decent super chat, so whatever. I like money. But fucking, I want to add my 2 cents real quick, and then if you guys want to battle it out, and then we can move on to talking about Hoppa.
I don't want to battle with Reed anymore. I love Reed. Reed's my guy.
I don't. It's like my friends are fighting, and I don't like it.
By the way, I'm not fighting. I'm just disagreeing. I don't like.
Yeah,
I don't.
No.
There's no.
We can all disagree.
For me,
I don't see any reason why we can't disagree. But anyways, I wanted to point out, because this is a point I kind of wanted to bring up personally. I mean, I'm not running a movement. Maybe I'm wrong. I like a little bit of ambiguity. Maybe not a lot, but a little bit. Because I personally like the sifting mechanism that comes in place with good faith actors. Now, I do think there is something to be said. This is my quality-quantity thing. I do think there is something to be said with the imprecise nature of certain things to where you can sift through who are your enemies and who are your friends. Maybe not enemies, not the right word, but who are your people and who are the people who aren't quite ready. And I think there's something to that.
I have one question for Dave on this, because I obviously did an entire episode on, I called it McCain's legacy, but then I focused entirely on Meghan and her track record as a talking head for propagating war. I know obviously Michael Malice has made it basically his career on saying how the corporate news is the enemy of the people, and that we ought to be demonizing them as much as possible. Obviously Trump came to power doing exactly that. I'm curious if you think that we should be holding the feet to the fire of people that are just propagandists for war, or if we should stick strictly to the politicians.
No, 100%. Go with the corporate press.
Okay.
I do it all day long. It's been a huge part of my show and everything. Yeah, go at them.
Sorry, but I mean not just the news talking heads, but like because she was on The View. I don't.
Yeah,
even know
it's
what
the same thing. It's all the cathedral.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
She's completely fair game to go after.
Right.
Absolutely. Like go after her and fucking trash her and destroy her, make fun of her, make fun of all of her views. Look, dude, I had a fucking entire fucking I don't know, dude. If this is look, I had an entire segment on fucking fucking what's his name who just got fired from CNN on my
Stelter.
favorite Stelter, my favorite little piggy,
Stelter,
as I used to call him, and would just fucking wreck him the entire time and fucking endlessly ridicule and mock him.
Some of my favorite
But
episodes.
you know, like, but if he was like at a funeral for a family member, right. I wouldn't fucking post a picture of that from a blue check official Libertarian Party account. Sure. You know? So is that like that's all it's saying? It's like because the truth is that we're like trying to let people know that we're the real humanitarians, and we're trying to like let people know that like we actually stand for something, and not that just we're I don't know. That's like this is just obvious to me. So I don't know like even what to say. But yes, of course, ruthlessly mock the corporate press.
Real quick, I want to
and that includes The View and all of that.
I want to point out a lot of people are giving malice shit about being friends with Meghan McCain. I want to say I think there are two. If you have a personal relationship with someone who has awful views, I think it's different than if you're not someone who is related to them whatsoever, and you're someone on social media that's doing something that's obviously for other people to view. Now, on Malice's level, I'm perfectly fine with him fucking, one, not jumping on fucking to shit on her, and also being friends with her, because a lot of people were giving him shit for that. It's like, there are people out there of awful views. Obviously, it's a little bit distinct because she's basically a war propagandist and the daughter of a fucking war criminal. A little bit different. But even so, I think there is something to, on a personal, individual basis, things are different depending on different contexts. So for that, I think people are 100% wrong giving him shit for being friends with Meghan McCain. Because I actually think if you have a personal relationship with someone like that, you actually can make more inroads by being like that than by fucking just being a fucking cunt to them, personally.
Especially doing it publicly, it would be totally counterproductive to probably what his end goal is. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and like I also I think that's exactly right. And I also think that like look, it's true that we're all obviously, like as I know, we're all gearing up for if things go the way I like I'm saying I want them to go, like what my goals are here is that like we're going to create a really big movement here. We're going to have like 100,000 new members to this party, and we're going to garner like attention in a way that we've never garnered before. Obviously, believe me, I know what's coming. I know that we're going to be taking like unbelievable like fucking hit campaigns. But the point is that even if that's the case, then that's almost like what makes it that much more important that we're, as Patrice O'Neill said to me, I remember Patrice O'Neill is the fucking best comic I've ever fucking seen, and I'm lucky enough to get to work with a little bit when I was young in my comedy career, and his advice was always like, look, always be righteous. Be righteous. Whatever people come at you with, always be ready to defend yourself because you were right about it. And that's kind of the point. And I will say this, that I think also, by the way, this is something just in general for this camp. And I know all three of you guys are like kind of in this camp, that it's like, look, I'll defend forever any joke you guys make on Tower Power Hour. Like, I'll fucking defend that to the death. And no matter how fucked up the joke is, if someone goes like, well, this joke is really so horrible, you're like, yeah, that's the show. That's what you're tuning in for. They're going to try to make the most fucked up joke. That's the whole idea of the show. That's what Legion of Skanks is, right? It's like that we're going to try to joke about.
We ripped it off from you. Come on.
Yeah, yes, and that's why I will defend it. But that's the point, right? It's like you go, look, if you're tuning into this, you're tuning into it because it's the fucking like wildly offensive joke show. Yeah. But that's different. Like, this is, like, pretty obvious nuance to me, but, like, that's different than fucking, like, a fucking blue check mark, LP account making that joke and then being like, well, it doesn't come off so clear to anybody that this is a joke. Yeah. It doesn't come off so clear that, like, why is this? Like, and, like, so we just want to be righteous. We want to, like, be, like, look, they're going to come at us with a lot of heat. And when they do come at us with that heat, we want to be able to be on the strongest ground to be like, no. You guys are full of shit. We can flip this around on you. Oh, you're offended because we make jokes on comedy podcasts? Like, screw you. But that's a very different thing than if there's a certain type of messaging being sent out from our political avenues, Right.
Dude, well, let me just fucking hard in Tower Power Hour now.
Let me tie a bow on this. This is basically the exact thing that you opened with, is that Alex Jones, he gets credit for what he gets right, but you have to not be sloppy. And if you get something wrong, you have to call it out, and don't make the job of getting us taken down easier is, I think, kind of what you're saying. And I have to agree with that. I think that it's not a good idea to give them, especially when the ammunition is about like the Holocaust shit. I just think it's like, there's no value to that at all. Like this is why I don't have an issue with the Meghan McCain one, because I think that there is some value, because I had really good conversations about it, but we can disagree on that.
Yeah, it's
I'm just
better.
Saying, some of the other ones though, it's like I don't see any upside. I just see all down. So that's kind of my perspective on it. Anyways, I know we beat it to death. I'm sorry. I just had to.
All right. Well, you mentioned Holocaust, so that makes a good transition.
Oh god.
Oh god damn it, Reed. What now?
Okay, I just wanted to say nobody in New Hampshire disagrees with what Clint just said. Like we're not trying to, shake off the blame for where we missed, but we also think there's credit where we hit. So I don't think anyone disagrees with that from New Hampshire.
Well, if you guys agree with me, then you're doing all right. Good job.
All right. Anyways, we brought up the Holocaust, and I've noticed there's
Here
been
we go. Here we fucking
all
go.
right, 6 million? No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, no, for real though, 6 million. No, I'm just kidding. But recently I've noticed a lot of shit being thrown, especially Dave and multiple other people's way of like, oh, you're friendly to Holocaust deniers, or fucking anti-Semitic this or that, and which obviously is extremely ironic when it's being directed at a Jew. But I wanted to take a moment to break it down a little bit logically, because I think, for one, I think on its face, yes, don't get me wrong, there are legit anti-Semites and there are legit people who say the Holocaust did not happen. Those are rare as fuck. And I think so often there are people who are not that are accused of it. And I think it's a little ridiculous. I mean, if you have a Nazi who's saying he thinks that the number was off or it didn't happen at all, it's like, and he's genuine, it's like, well, I guess that's kind of a better Nazi since he's saying we shouldn't kill Jews. I mean, maybe there's a point to be had there. I think the whole anti-Semitism, Holocaust denier accusation bullshit is just silly, and I kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on it, because it's just the most hacky bullshit that the regime comes out with, in my opinion.
Well, wasn't it? It was Christopher Cantwell who said in Michael Malice's book, he said, he goes, I have noticed, Malice like grilled him and asked him if he thinks the Holocaust happened, and he goes, well, and this is like a legit, neo-Nazi fucking guy. And he was like, he goes, I have noticed that everyone who denies the Holocaust also wishes it happened again. And there's a coincidence there, so I don't I agree that, like, look, the Holocaust fucking happened. I think that there's no real, like, all of our brilliant intellectuals in our intellectual tradition, not one of them ever took the position that this fucking Holocaust, there's really something there. And these guys, I mean, I'm talking about like fucking Rothbard and fucking Hoppe and all the guys at the Mises Institute and all of them, like these fucking really brilliant guys who really were willing to tell you the most unpopular thing about history, that fucking, oh, this is the propaganda, it didn't really happen that way. They'll tell you about the Gulf of Tonkin. They'll tell you about like all this fucking shit. Not a one of them ever said, hey, I don't think these numbers add up with the Holocaust, right? So there's really like almost no there's no intellectual tradition in our movement who are actually telling you we think there's anything less than what happened here. There are some people who really looked into it. I think Sheldon Richman looked into it and concluded that like fucking like really looked like, oh, this David Urban guy is saying this shit, let's really take an honest look at it. Concluded it was over 6 million people who died in it, and there's other people who have made estimates that they're all come right around that number. So I don't think it's like whoever the people are who are like flirting with that shit, I don't actually think there's anything there. That being said, yes, it is fucking bizarre that like it's this one topic that's completely off limits, that's like made radioactive, and that's kind of silly. But the reason for that is kind of obvious. It's because it's the whole justification of the entire American empire. And it's the post hoc justification. It's not even the reason we fought World War II. It's just after World War II, after you had the worst mass murder campaign in the history of the world, there had to be kind of like some reason why this will forever be totally justified. And so what actually did happen to my family, as well as many other people, is used as the justification for why you must never completely question whether America should have a like heavily interventionist foreign policy and all that shit. So there's there's just like a lot of like fucking nuance to that point. It's a great thing to talk about on podcasts. It's a great thing to probably write a book about. Probably not the best thing to tweet about if you're like a high profile fucking, libertarian.
Stop it, Dave. We're moving away from that.
No. But look, I'm saying nothing against New Hampshire, even with that. I felt the same way about the Libertarian Party's tweet about McCarthy. It's like, this is a great topic for a chapter in a book. Because it's like, you're right, and there's a lot of nuance to this, and there's a really interesting point to make there. But just in a tweet, it's probably not going to get across. So anyway, I more or less like that's my thought on it. I also do kind of agree with you where I said, I've made this point before where I go, it's kind of funny that the idea of like denying a genocide from 70 years ago is somehow worse than supporting a genocide happening right now in real time. Like one that is really happening, versus claiming one that didn't happen in the past. So there's a lot of, there's just like a lot of like fucking interesting shit to go down in that.
Yeah, there's so much nuance to the Holocaust too, in the aspect of, I know a lot of it, you could almost make the case in some regards, don't get me wrong, Hitler sucked, Germany, the fucking Nazis were bad, but, the fucking wartime conditions we put them in a lot of ways did antagonize some of the stuff that happened. They were trying to give them away. I'm not saying it was okay. I feel like it's gay. I even have to caveat this shit, like at all, but there is so much nuance to this discussion that doesn't get discussed because of the fact that it's so much like this taboo thing that if you even bring it up whatsoever, and this is why we have people that are like, oh, it was only 1 million or it didn't happen at all, because there's not a discussion that's allowed to be had whatsoever, because it's a post hoc rationalization for us entering the bloodiest war we've ever been in that enabled some of the worst fucking people after it to do fucking horrendous shit. Like, look at USSR. It's fucking ridiculous.
Well, let me just say, I agree with everything Dave just said, actually. The only thing I would add is that I don't like anything that gets to a point of like third rail, so taboo, I can't even consider or question or anything like that. That's the only reason that I have any interest in the topic at all, to be honest, is because I'm told I cannot fucking talk about this. I cannot look into it. No. Like that shit drives me nuts. And when I'm told that, like same thing happened with the origin story of COVID or treatment for it. Like those are the things for an entire year we weren't allowed to talk about it, even though we were fucking right. So, and I'm not saying that we're right about anything
everyone caveat everything.
No, but that's the only thing that I will say about it is like that. I like to be able to talk about anything, so I'm going to. And number two, I don't find the subject matter interesting enough or important enough to my current situation that I'm going to spend basically any time on it at all. Like we have so much fucking crazy shit that's happening right now. It bewilders me as to why some people that are also in the anti-war camp are like obsessed with this topic. It doesn't seem to connect. Like I'm missing the connection.
Yeah, it's not it's like I can kind of understand if I'm trying to be like as generous as possible, where there'd be some people, if you were like in the anti-war camp, where I suppose you could say, well, if this isn't true,
sure,
then the entire justification kind of falls apart, and oh my God, what a propaganda campaign.
You're never going to convince people of that.
Or even if it's inflated, it's the idea that they hold up these numbers.
The problem just is that it isn't.
Yeah.
And so that like you end up like now you're back in the realm of just like kind of trying to like invent a better, like argument for what you have than what like Dick Cheney really was there and took down the towers or something, rather than it just being the argument that it is that like probably looked the other way on well rather than it being like probably looked the other way as some Saudi friends of his, you know what I mean, were like involved in this shit and got them out of the country. Like, well, I know that's not quite as sexy as like what the fucking like the hardcore truther people would have said, but like that is just the reality. And the truth is that even amongst like the fucking hardcore neo-reactionary right, it's kind of the dumb person thing to really like question whether the Holocaust happened. Like even like Mencius Moldbug was like rolling his eyes at the people who deny the Holocaust, and he's like, you guys are fucking retarded. Like you don't know anything about history if you think this didn't actually happen. Now to your point, Jose, and it's a really good book that I highly recommend everyone read, is Pat Buchanan's Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War, is that, there's a really strong argument to say, like, look, Hitler only went genocidal, not only after the war started, but after it became clear he was losing the war. And so it is not at all clear that short of that war, the Holocaust would have ever happened. And so that does really flip everything on its head, where it's like, it's not even like, first off, it's just not the case that we fought the war to end the Holocaust. And in fact, us fighting the war might have, in many ways, maybe the Holocaust could have been prevented had we not fought the war. And so there's a lot of like interesting points in there.
Let me just add to my prior point in saying that the primary reason I think that it's fruitless to do so is that we have so much misinformation and disinformation that we're dealing with in the past 2.5 years that I'm like I have all the work I could possibly handle just trying to correct these narratives that are happening in real time, and we're being propagandized to believe complete falsehoods. It's like, am I going to really spend the time and energy to try and convince someone that something that happened 75 years ago is now completely the inverse or whatever the fuck, It's
well,
like,
this is, and the thing that I got shit for that you alluded to, Jose, I got shit for the other day for saying on Twitter, which like, I mean, I guess with all these things, I guess I could have said it in a fucking better way, but like, fuck that guy. Cause he lured me into it too. I fucking hate people like that who like ask you questions about controversial areas, and then as soon as you answer it, like honestly, they don't even have an argument against you. They just go, I can't believe you said that or whatever. Cause it was specifically a reply tweet to him, because Hoppe said that there was this narrative constructed that good defeated evil in World War II. And my point was that it's like, look, this is the reality, is that all of the fucking propaganda about how evil the Nazis are is really that true. Like the Nazis really were that evil. There's not really anything added to that. The bullshit is about how the side that opposed them was good.
Right.
And so I went no, what Hoppe's saying here is that the narrative is good defeated evil. And I preface, I said the first line of the sentence, I said the Nazis were unthinkably evil. But you're talking about the British Empire and the Soviet Union, for God's sakes. Like, you want to like go through like the fucking body counts that they had also. So that's the point of it.
Dresden, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, fucking firebombing of Tokyo.
Right. And then it's like, and then he's like, wow, you're equivocating between the Nazis and these other people. It's like, it's fuck you, suck a dick. Like, you don't actually have an argument.
Kind of like, yes, I am. We did fucking awful shit.
Well, like, I'm not even like equivocate. I don't know. It's like, I don't think as fucked up as some of the shit the British Empire did. No, I'm not like saying that. No, I don't think they were on the same level of evil as the Nazis.
But the idea would be like, oh my God, you're equivocating. It's like, we did awful shit. What the fuck?
But the Soviet Union and the Nazis, I mean, like,
Jesus. And we put them in a favorable position.
What by the US way, did to Japan?
I would say still, and this is honestly this is a God's honest opinion. I would say all of that shit considered, if I had to pick the most evil regime, it would be the Nazis still. And I still, and if I had to say, ultimately it was better that they lost the fucking war, because god damn, they did so much evil in such a short period of time, and it wasn't even like the same. It's a different level of evil. Like there's something about like even forced starvations are a little bit different than fucking throwing children in fucking gas chambers. Like there's just a difference there. And to do it in a few years, who knows what they would have fucking done if they had actually like won that war.
The whole point is it's not the ideal.
The point is that it's like it's still not good defeating evil. It's like, holy shit, the most evil regimes that ever rose up all went to war with each other, and I guess the most evil one lost. But anyway, so that's kind of like the point that's interesting there. It's like, no, the Nazis were every bit as evil as they are, and this is also part of the reason why this is this is what they cling to as their justifying narrative, because this is one that really works. You know what I mean? Like it really, in the same way that like fucking, what do the progressives cling to about like the narrative of racism in America? They cling to like slavery and Jim Crow, because those things really were that fucking bad. Like it really is, so it's like, it's hard to argue against that. Now it doesn't make any sense to fucking blame everyone living today for that, or to act like that is current America, but that there is truth to the evil of all of that. And it's the same thing with the Nazis. Like, the Nazis were that fucking evil, but goddamn, how much more people are aware of how evil the Nazis were in like regular Americans than they are about the Soviet Union. The ratio is way off. Like, it's way off.
And how much worse did we make it by our involvement in general? I think, you know.
Oh
it's
yeah,
an
for
important
sure.
question. Yeah. So, well, I don't know if you guys have anything to add. We're at over 2 hours. I feel like we're at a good spot. We've laughed, we've cried, we fought, we've loved.
Reed pooped. I mean, this is
Reed pooped.
Only once. I was impressed, but
I was like, I really never thought I'd be on a podcast where Reed would take a shit in the middle and then we'd start fighting about tweets that afterward.
But here we are.
I love you, Reed, and I love all the fucking New Hampshire guys. I just fucking whatever. I hope we can all fucking
fine.
we can disagree and we can all fucking, you know, try to hear what the other people are saying.
Honestly, I like as tumultuous as this past couple of weeks have been, I think that there will be value. Like, if we want to, there can be value from these discussions, because I think that as you've already pointed out, it's going to get really fucking intense over the next 2 years. So I think that it's important that we have this conversation and this debate now, so that hopefully we can stop with the missteps and we can actually be in alignment moving forward. So dude, I hope that's what comes from it.
I cannot wait till they find a Legion of Skank shit. I'm gonna be fucking like a pig and shit on Twitter when that happens.
It is shocking that it's taken this long.
I'm so amazed.
I think there's some people who are fucking sitting on it. Like, fucking someone said
it's the October surprise.
Well, right. Someone said to me the other day on Twitter, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I was shitting on something. It's Archie Part 2. Some other guys building a case against me. And he goes, I've been doing, what did he opposition research. I've been doing Oppo research on you. And I go, you mean you've been listening to my podcast that I put out publicly? Like, that's the research? That's what you're saying? Like, you've dug deep to go to my Twitter bio and then see the links that I have up there. Like, it's so fucking bizarre. They try to claim it's like we have secret information.
Do you know how many times Dave Smith has said, you want to stick a fist up your ass? You got lube? I've heard it at the end of every single episode. It's unbelievable.
I'm so excited for the Dave Smith nigger reel. It's going to be fucking glorious.
Well, but like, that's fucking, like I said before, the thing that almost like, look, if I were to go on Kennedy, or I were to go like when I don't know, Glenn Beck show or something like that, and I were to do Legion of Skank shit on there, that'd be completely indefensible, right? And that'd be it for me. If I did that, like, but yeah, dude, in the same sense that it's like, if all of us go out to a bar, we're gonna talk a little bit different than we would at our fucking wife's Thanksgiving dinner table. Course, I don't know. Yeah. It's just like so it's like, but the fact is that the thing that makes it completely easy to defend is that it's like, oh yes, and where did I say this? On a comedy podcast labeled the most offensive podcast in the world, right? Like, if you tune into this is what you're here for. So what? What are you bitches talking about? Like, okay, that makes it easy to dismiss, and that makes sense. And the other thing I would just say is that, like, for anyone who like listens to my fucking shit, no one, and I know all you guys fucking have listened to a decent amount of my shit, no one has any question about when I'm joking and when I'm being serious. No one has any question about, like, wait, was that a joke, or did you actually mean that? You know what I mean? Like, you know what my political views are, and you know what I think is fucking hilarious. And like, I also think that's a really important element to all of this shit. Not because fucking CNN is going to treat us fairly, but because the people who we can fucking reach will get it, you know? And so, like, that's what I want all of us to fucking keep our like kind of focused on, is that it's like, that's like what we're really in this for. And I hope we're all together in that.
In the distance.
The point is that we want to fucking wake up as many people as we can. And so, like, that's the fucking, that's the goal. That's the thing to always keep in mind.
Yeah. All right, couple more super chats. We'll get out of here. Final thought: today's YouTubers are tomorrow's DROs. I don't know what the fuck a DRO is, but it sounds familiar. I'm sorry.
Either. No clue.
Anyone else in there know what it is?
Sorry.
No.
Nice show as always, fellas, from JC, freaking guy in my chat. I appreciate it. All right, I think it's the last one. Let me look to the bottom. Yep, that's the last one. If anyone wants to squeeze in before
Follow
we do
me
plugs.
on Twitter at
Yep.
Liberty Lock Pod, and Alex Jones is rescheduled for next week. So hang in there.
There we go.
It's
Yeah.
coming. God, I can't wait.
I'm
It's
just
gonna
letting
be
you
so
guys
fucking
know,
awesome.
Clint is lying to you guys. He's going to keep in this rescheduling game. It's not happening.
It's
gonna
like me
be
with
made
Tulsi Gabbard, like it's just never actually gonna happen.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
what
no,
the
no,
fuck
no.
happened with that? Wasn't she supposed to come on?
Yeah, like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, then he
Not
did a
cool,
6 million
Tulsi.
tweet.
Awful,
and it blew
awful 9/11 tweet she had, huh? Did you guys see
Yeah,
that?
she makes worse
God,
tweets
yeah.
than LP New Hampshire does. You got to give us that, Dave.
But God,
I
she's hot, so it makes
Reed,
up for it.
I 100% agree with you on that. This is where we come together and rekindle our friendship. That is worse than anything New Hampshire. No, listen, I will say also, by the way, fucking all that, just so it's clear here, even old LP National tweets where they were like, look, like we're against the mandates, but you really should stay home and wear a mask and all
Still
this.
better.
That shit was way fucking worse than anything
Yeah.
fucking New Hampshire's ever
Oh,
said. So,
well,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
still
Counter
better than what
regime
Tulsi
quote,
said,
yeah.
though.
Yes, better than Tulsi. Worse than
Worse
New
than
Hampshire.
LPNH.
Everybody go
Don't
check out Daniel McAdams' episode today. Was great. And I also have Adam Krigler on tomorrow. I don't know. The lineup's ridiculous. So hop on board, Liberty Lockdown. Read.
It's also lying about the Adam Krigler thing. He's going to ghost him again.
I don't have a
I hope
reputation
not.
for getting banned off everything, but I'm only banned off Twitter. So you can follow me everywhere else. Reed Coverdale. My show is Naturalist Capitalist. So YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Odyssey, and now on Rumble. So go check those out.
All right, Dave, I know everyone knows who you are, but, for the sake of, how this normally works, drop your plugs, please.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I'm going out to St. Louis tomorrow to go do Andy Frisella, his podcast, which I don't know if you guys know him, but he's like a big fucking he's a real rich fucking workout dude, fucking business guy stuff, and he's real into
cool.
what we're doing. So I'm gonna fucking
Love it,
go
man.
out there and
Different.
talk to him. So that should be interesting. And I got a
It's
bunch
a
of shit.
podcast.
Is that show in Austin already sold out?
It's I don't know. You have to go check the links, but yeah, on the 25th, one night only in Austin, Texas. ComicDaveSmith.com. My ticket links are up there. But there's I'm not sure if it's not. It's
Probably.
going to be sold out soon. So go fucking get tickets
What's
now.
the name of that dude's podcast?
I think it's the Real AF, like real as fuck. I think is the podcast.
The
But
real
that's
bro
gonna be
shit.
yeah. But it's good. But he's cool, man. He's real into what we're fucking doing. And I got some cool shit coming up this month. So I'll just say that. Stay
You
tuned.
killed
for
on
that.
Timcast, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That was
Dude.
that was an interesting one. I didn't expect it to go the way it did, and
Yeah,
I got more. It's of all the times I've been on that show, that was the most pissed off I've made his audience. But I think it was good that I did.
I'm
that.
really surprised the LPNH stuff didn't come up. I was like, because I don't know if you saw my tweet. I was like, here's his Ron Paul moment. Because don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you would back up everything he said, or be shitty to them. But I was like, I feel like he could frame this in a way that would really be like a mic drop moment. So
Let me just say that I messaged you about when I was halfway through. I said this is the first hour of you on Timcast was the best I've ever seen any of your perform. The second hour may have been better. It was so fucking good, dude. And
Thank you, brother.
I've obviously seen you on like everything ever, but all of your Rogan appearances, I think that 2-hour period was just like fireworks.
Well,
beginning
thank
to
you.
start.
I appreciate that. And me and Reed were texting on the phone the other day. I know, despite what people from this show might think, we really love each other. And we were texting on the phone the other day. And Reed said something that really stuck with me, that I think he's right. And in fact, I was talking to Scott Horton on the phone about this earlier today, and I was like, Reed said this, and I think he might be right about this. Where it was like, you're like the next like Ron Paul Giuliani moment might actually really have to be fucking like this type shit, and like calling out the right wing on being China hawks, or calling out the right wing on like their Trump support and this shit. Because it's like, in a way, it's like it's so easy now to like call out all the like the woke insanity and the progressive like nonsense, and that's good. But like at a certain point, you feel like, oh, I'm just getting kind of like pats on the back for doing this, and it's not really separating us. But the thing is, like, if we're really calling out all that woke shit and the insane progressive shit, but then also turning around and going like, yeah, and you guys are fucking crazy to be like, what are you, this dumb? You're falling right into the China hawk shit after everything we've been through in the last 20 years. Like that kind of might be what like our movement has to be to kind of separate us from that. Like, yeah, we're against the progressives, we're against the woke shit, but you know what? We're also not Trump supporters, and we're also not falling for any of this China hawk bullshit. The insanity of like, there's like China's going to take over the world, and that's why we need the military industrial complex. It's like, wow, of all the excuses for it, this one is like got to be the weakest and dumbest. So
that was
your reaction to that was priceless.
That was the
Russia
crux of my
taking
point.
over the world is like a little bit more feasible than China taking over the world at this point.
Yeah, that's the crux of my point was that like, and I'm not even saying you need to be shitty to anyone. Like a lot of people don't realize Ron Paul wasn't being shitty in any way, shape, or form in that moment. He was just speaking truth, and that's all it was. That was enough for people like, what the fuck? And
can I add something to this too?
God damn it! I'm just kidding.
Sorry, I was shitting half the show. So
that is true. You get to make up your shit time, Reed.
Yeah.
You get to go.
I just do want to say this. Someone who has like nothing but respect for Ron Paul, met him a few times, had him on my show. What he told me when I was on his show was, I asked him basically like, what can we in the next generation do to further our cause, something along those lines. And he just told me, you have to do whatever it is you can do. So I'm all about like, you know, looking to Ron Paul as a North Star and, you know, treating him as the great man that he is. But I feel like some people think we all need to be like Ron Paul. And I'm not saying you're saying this, Dave, but there is this sentiment like with the new wave of the Libertarian Party, we all need to be Ron Paul. I think we need Jeremy Kaufman's. I think we need Jose Gallison's. We need Clint Russell's, and we need Dave Smith's. And we're just not Ron Paul. We can't all be Ron Paul. Ron Paul is a baby doctor who served in Congress for 20 years and went to Vietnam. This is not who we all are. So that's not to take anything away from him or his legacy. I just think a lot of us are lying to ourselves if we say we want to be Ron Paul again. And I know that might sound controversial, but and I've played into that too in the past.
Well,
but
I want to be Ron
something...
Paul. I just can't. So I'm going to try and be the best version of myself.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I also think, like, I saw someone the other day on Twitter who was saying, like, there was something like they were like shitting on the Mises Caucus and being like, oh, like, well, you guys say Ron Paul's your hero, but then you guys are being all like abrasive and shit like this, and he was never, you know, like that. And my first thought was to go like, yeah, and you know what happened to Ron Paul? You called him all the names that you call the Mises Caucus. Yeah. You know, and so I think there's something to that it's almost like even when he was doing his thing, you still called him a fucking racist because one time on a newsletter that he didn't even fucking write, someone made like a mildly offensive comment about something because fucking Jeffrey Tucker wrote it or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and no one even like calls that guy out. That guy completely just floats in like respectable circles.
Was it Jeffrey Tucker that wrote it?
Yes, until he was good on COVID, and then they kicked him out of those respectable circles for actually being decent on something. But regardless of that, it's like, yeah, I mean, I get your point, but at the same time, it's like, just because you can never like kind of like achieve, we're not going to be exactly like him. We can still fucking learn a lot from his lesson.
Yeah,
and the
I totally agree.
And the lesson there is that it's like, it's not like being the most radical doesn't mean being the most fucking like, it doesn't mean being the biggest dick in the room. It actually means like, now, obviously, look at me. Do you think I'm ever going to be Ron Paul? Like, no, I'm on the fucking Legion of Skanks. I'm a shit-talking New York comedian. But at the same time, the thing about me that fucking, like, is the reason why I'm, like, kind of the best at getting people to consider this libertarian shit right now is not because I like, say the edgiest jokes in Legion of Skanks. It's because when I make a point about this libertarian shit, people go, fuck, that's like the best point about this libertarian shit. And that's kind of like, that was the whole like kind of promise about doing this whole libertarian takeover shit. That was how I like recruited all these people to do this. It wasn't like on some like, we're going to do Legion of Skanks shit. It was like, we're going to do part of the problem shit. And part of the problem shit is not Ron Paul shit. I'm even saying shit too much for it to be Ron Paul shit. You know what I mean? But it's like, but it still kind of is. It's like our generation doing Ron Paul shit. So that's I don't completely disagree with what you're saying, Reed. But I think like we got to find a way to do it the right way. You know?
Yes.
So
Let
that's
us
all.
not forget Ron Paul did call a guy fat on fucking on
Pretty
Martin
great.
Tanner Jr.
But
was
I
pretty
do
great.
think there's a point to be had. We talked on father figures earlier and the lessons we learned from them. I don't think any of us took the lesson that we should do exactly what that father figure did, but we tried our best to discern what the best lessons were to learn from each different positive male role model in our lives. And I think that's a good way to go about it. Not to look at any individual as a subjective metric of what you need to be and to remember to be yourself, but to try to take lessons from people you see positive things from. Any other plugs from you, Dave, before we roll out?
That's it. You guys know where to find me.
All right. And this is the No Way Jose podcast. You can find me on YouTube, all the major auto podcatchers, Odyssey as well. If you want to follow me on Twitter at SenorJose2020. And that's it. Like, share, subscribe, all that gay shit. And with that, we are out. I appreciate all your time. Appreciate you, Dave. I know it's got a little heated, but we all love each other, and this was dope.
Hugs and kisses, motherfuckers. We're out.
All right, cool.